Hello and welcome to the Healthcare EcoCast. Today's topic, Healthcare Health Check, assessing IT products and services to streamline healthcare operations. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're in the healthcare industry in some shape or form, this event is for you. On this event, we've got some exciting new presenters and exciting new technology innovations around healthcare IT. You'll hear from experts at Netlink, Outsystems, Servicenow, Atempo, CrowdStrike, Sophos, Pure Storage, and Rubric. Now, before we get started with today's topic, there's just a few things that you should know about the format of this event. On the event, you may have heard we've got some prizes, and we do. I'll be talking about the requirements for those prize drawings here in just a moment. We want this to be an educational event. We know that you are constantly challenged in the world of healthcare IT, and we want to help you overcome those challenges. We encourage your questions in the questions panel in your audience console, and I'll be doing dedicated Q&A sessions with each presenter on the event today. This is a live event, and we want your real-time feedback. I'll be bringing up a number of poll questions as well, and sharing the results of most of those polls with you. We also want this to be a social event. You can tweet directly from your audience console using the Twitter icon on the bottom of your screen. If you do that, the hashtag for the event today will be automatically appended. So there's no need to leave your audience console if you want to socialize the event on Twitter. We also have hand-selected resources in the Handouts tab of your audience console. These are special links, ebooks, solution briefs, white papers. I encourage you to check those out. The prize drawings for today will be 3 Amazon $500 gift cards. You must be live in attendance to qualify. I'll be periodically announcing the prize winners throughout the event. We also have our best question prize. And it's not just one prize, it's an Amazon $50 gift card for each session on the event today. That's a lot of Amazon $50 gift cards. To be entered into this prize drawing, of course, you must be live on the event, but you also need to submit a question in the questions pane. Winners must still meet the ActualTech Media prize policy, and will contact the best question prize winners after the EcoCast. You'll find the prize terms and conditions there in the Handouts tab. All prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to ActualTech Media. Full prize terms and conditions can be found on our website, as well as, like I said, there in the Handouts tab. Thanks to generous prize winners over the years, we have donated thousands of dollars to the charities that you see here on the screen. If you win a prize and you'd like to donate the prize value to charity, we would love to help you do that. We've done that in partnership with the Gorilla Guide Book Club. You'll find a link to gorilla.guide there in your Handouts tab. That's where you can download free, full-length educational ebooks. The social media hashtags for today are ATM EcoCast. You can follow ActualTech Media out on Twitter, and me, your moderator, David M. Davis, as well. Subscribe to all the ActualTech Media social channels on YouTube, Facebook, and the 10 on Tech podcast. You'll find links to those in the top right-hand side of your audience console, as well as our LinkedIn channel, where we post all of our latest and greatest content, so make sure that you follow us there. Now, before we do a few poll questions, and then I introduce you to today's first expert presenter, I want to talk briefly about the 4 critical concerns in healthcare IT. If you're in the industry, and most of you are on the event today, I'm sure that many of these concerns will be very familiar. But the point of this is to set the stage for some of the solutions that you'll be learning about on today's Healthcare EcoCast event. The first and most important critical concern, in my opinion, for any healthcare IT organization is core security. Starting off with physical security. Of course, you can't put all the data in a vault like Fort Knox, but you can do whatever you can do to physically protect the data. Unfortunately, that data today is spread across distributed systems. It's up in the cloud, it's on mobile devices, and so physical security is getting more and more challenging. But you'll need to apply, of course, the principle of least privilege, making sure that no one has access to any more data than they need to minimally do their job. You want to apply defense in depth. Remember, there is no silver bullet in security, Security is always implemented in layers, just like a bank or a fort or a jail. There's going to be multiple layers of security. And so we in healthcare IT not only have physical security, but we have authentication, authorization, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, firewalls, and more intelligent security systems today. And of course, data security. You want to encrypt that data in flight and at rest. The second critical concern in healthcare IT is around network security. Of course, you have to segment the network, protect the edge, which more and more is just about everywhere. There is no more perimeter these days, with everyone working from home and remote locations and mobile devices. And that's why zero trust and microsegmentation are more important than ever before. Of course, port-based and wireless security, and then especially multi-factor authentication. And you'll be learning about some awesome solutions in these areas today. Moving on, number 3 on our list of 4 critical concerns in healthcare IT. Of course, you have patch management and anti-malware solutions, but also host-based intrusion and ransomware detection. You need to always presume that a device is compromised, and that's where zero trust comes in. You don't want to be one of those healthcare organizations that's in the news with some sort of malicious attack and data breach. And that's why innovative security solutions are so important in healthcare IT. And then, of course, always overarching in healthcare IT is the requirement for what I consider to be number 4 on the list of critical concerns: compliance. You have SIEM systems, security information and event management, encryption, data protection, and disaster recovery solutions that you'll learn about on the event today, your last line of defense. And then vulnerability scanning and compliance management. Compliance is so critical when it comes to protecting personally identifiable information and personal health information like you all store. Of course, these are just the top 4 that I came up with. There are many more concerns I know that each of you face every day. In fact, we'll move to a poll here in just a moment. We've got an exciting event lined up for you today on the EcoCast. You're about to discover some of the most innovative and exciting healthcare IT solutions on the EcoCast today. So with that, let's now jump into a poll where I want to hear, what are your critical concerns in the world of healthcare IT? I'll bring up the poll now. All right, you should see a poll on your screen there in the slides window that says, what are your most critical concerns in healthcare IT? And I want to get your feedback on this. I put in what I feel like are, some of the top concerns, but obviously every organization is different. And so if your concern is not listed, just drop it there in the questions box and I'll share your concern with everyone out here on the EcoCast. And of course, I want to use that information as well to improve future poll questions like this. I want to make sure I include everyone's concerns. So if you don't see the poll, try a refresh on your web browser. 9 times out of 10, that'll resolve any problem on these events. If you are thinking about, the concerns there and you have multiple, feel free to select multiple. You don't just select one. So I'll give you a moment to respond to this, and then I'll share the results, and you can see how you stack up with your peers on the EcoCast. Let's see, feedback from Ned. He said security and ransomware are his top concern. Thank you for sharing that. Feel free to select that in the poll question as well. Thank you for all the good morning and hello messages to everyone out there from across the United States and around the world. We love the ActualTech Media audience. We love to see your happy messages here in the questions pane, so thank you for those. All right, thank you to everyone who responded here in the poll. I'm going to go ahead and share the results now. And it looks like top concern is around security and ransomware, followed by data protection and disaster recovery. And then it looks like a very, kind of even split among staffing, justifying solutions, data management, cloud migration, complexity around cloud. 4% of you said other concerns not listed. Drop those in the questions box. I see ransomware, educating users on security, Hipaa and PHI data compliance. Great feedback. Thank you for everyone who responded there to that poll question. And then one more poll question before I introduce you to our first presenter. The question on the screen is, what's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company, like the ones that you're learning about here on the EcoCast today, and of course, like the, related back to the concerns that you just expressed. All right, thank you to everyone who responded there to the poll question. We do appreciate your feedback. It's now time to kick off the EcoCast with our first presenter. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Craig St. Jean, Director at the Outsystems Center of Excellence at Netlink. Craig, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's great to have you, Craig. Take it away.
Great. So today I wanted to talk to you about the Outsystems low-code development platform and how that can help healthcare organizations really improve their productivity and get moved into the cloud, and also deal with some of those security concerns that you mentioned in the poll. So what I want to talk about is what is low code and what is the Outsystems platform capable of providing. I also want to talk about a case study about a nonprofit health organization that we've worked with. We're going to see a very short demo just to give you kind of a taste of what it looks like. And we'll talk about how to get started and get into some questions. So low code is the ability to generate applications very rapidly using a different methodology than your traditional development style. So instead of having a lot of developers that have to learn all sorts of different technologies, writing many lines of code which are very prone to bugs and everything else, it's using tools that allow you to very rapidly build things with their own backing code, so that way you don't have to write it. Excuse me. It's a little bit different than you might have heard something called no code. So no code platforms are also out there, and they allow you to generate applications very quickly, but they also have some limitations when you need to build things in your own way, whereas the low code platforms such as Outsystems give you that flexibility to still do what you need. And it's really about applying automation to software delivery. So not only is it the ability to build your applications very rapidly using these tools, but it's also about automation in the tools. And the Outsystems platform has a lot of examples of this. For when you're building your applications, it will allow you to do things in an automated fashion where it will build things out for you and then allow you to modify them as needed if you want, or you can still build things from scratch, of course. So Outsystems is a visual full stack development tool. It supports web and mobile, as well as some backend capabilities. So you can actually build Alexa apps within the Outsystems platform, as an example. You can deploy to, I just activated my Alexa by saying that. You can deploy to any touch point, as I mentioned, and it gives you the full life cycle of development. So you create your applications, but you can also deploy them, monitor them, manage them. It's the full gamut. Some use cases that people have used Outsystems for include customer engagement with B2C, critical B2C operations, field services, mass core operations, mission critical operations, etc. Now I want to tell you a little bit about what the OutSystems capabilities itself are. So I've mentioned full stack. This allows you to develop your UIs, your web and mobile. It allows you to develop logic. So this includes not only the logic for your applications or any back-end processes or repeatable tasks or so on, but also workflow, which is what's meant by process right there. So you can have your workflow that includes human interactions and your business process modeling right within the platform itself. And you can also manage your data and your entities. So you've got everything right at your fingertips. It supports tons of integrations right out of the box, REST and SOAP APIs, both if you want to consume an API or expose one, cloud services connecting to Amazon S3, for example, connecting to Vonage or Twilio for your video capabilities, enterprise systems such as SAP, databases, etc. And it has a full lifecycle tool called Lifetime to give you DevOps capabilities to deploy between any of your environments with the click of a button, basically. And that's also going to give you the ability to monitor your applications and turn on or off built-in user feedback capabilities of your applications. So if you want to know what are my users thinking, they want to tell me about something that's not working right or something like that, that capability is built right into your applications and you can get easy access to that. And from an experience standpoint, again, web and mobile, also APIs, web services, chat, voice, SMS, email, these are all part of the platform. So high-speed delivery is the name of the game here. Full stack visual development. You can see some screenshots of what the development environment looks like. And later I will show a very short video just kind of giving you that taste of what it's like. The single click deployment is one of the things that's very unique to OutSystems. If you see this green circle in the middle of that first screen there, when I'm developing an application in the OutSystems platform and I want it to be live in my development environment, I click that button, and about 10 seconds later, the application, including web, mobile, anything I need, as well as any data changes, are all running live right in development. So it's nice and easy, and I can get my users or my testers experiencing what I've been working on right away, get that quick feedback, and go back to continuing my development. Mobile is made as just as easy as web development in the OutSystems platform. They're done in an extremely similar manner. There's also that in-app feedback that I mentioned, as well as automatic refactoring capabilities. Again, automation being one of the main keys to the OutSystems platform. So these workflow capabilities, this is where I was talking about that business process modeling. This is built into the platform, so you don't need an external tool such as Pegasus or IBM BPM to build your workflows, which has the great benefit of if I change my application logic, then in a manner that would break one of my processes, I'm going to get that information right up front, right away, and I will get this little red box that says, hey, you've got an error. Whereas with some of the traditional tools, since they're external to your development, if you go and change something, you don't find out until you're testing, or worst case, there's some edge case that you don't find out until you're already in production. And as I've mentioned, you can integrate with everything. There's pre-built connectors for NetSuite, MySQL, PeopleSoft, FICO, and so on. SOAP and REST integrations. And you can also create any connectors that you want for yourself as well. Now, of course, a great user experience is critical to these applications, and OutSystems has spent a significant amount of time doing studies of best practices for different types of screens and user widgets. So when you want to go and create a new web screen or mobile screen or so on, you have access to a bunch of different templates that OutSystems has already built that meets these best practices and allows you to then go and modify to meet your own needs. So that way you are delivering a great user experience right out of the gate. And one of the things that brought me personally into the platform is the fact that it's low code without constraints. My background was in traditional development, and I've worked with a lot of different low code tools or 4GL tools or so on that are great when you do exactly how the tool wants you to and you stay on the happy path. But the second that you want to do something your own way or do something a little bit custom, it becomes either extremely challenging or impossible. And when I was evaluating the OutSystems platform for a property and casualty insurance company that I was working for previously, the platform basically just never hit that point. It's very well thought through of the different extension points that you might need and gives you the capability of doing exactly what you want in a manner that works for you and your business requirements. Also, there's the ability to deploy without vendor lock-in, which is obviously a huge concern within these types of proprietary platforms. If I want to discontinue my OutSystems license, I can actually get the .NET version of my application out of the platform and continue developing against that if I choose to discontinue my license. Of course, with anything healthcare related, we care about these enterprise-grade operations. So security, scalability, performance, architecture, flexible deployments. As far as security goes, you can deploy to the OutSystems cloud where they will manage all of this for you, or you can choose to deploy to your own environment, whether it's your own servers or Amazon AWS or Azure, and you can secure it to however degree you wish. And it's just like deploying any other .NET application at that point when it comes to managing the security of your infrastructure. It's scalable. You can, again, with using your own environment, you can spin up as many servers as you want, or if you're in the OutSystems cloud, you can add additional servers. The OutSystems cloud itself actually just runs on AWS, so you benefit from the security and scalability and performance that AWS already offers. Now, I've touched on this a little bit when it comes to unbreakable deployment. So you get automatic impact assessments, and when you go and make a change in one part of your application, you get notified that you're going to potentially break something else. And this includes not just general code changes or code errors, but also if you're going to change something that would impact a business process, or even if you have a microservice that you built within the platform, you still get that impact assessment, so you can find out that you're going to make a breaking change to this microservice that you have clients consuming. And that's something that's not generally handled within traditional development. You find out either because you paid attention to the clients, or you created multiple versions and you have to then keep track of who's pointing to which version of the contract, or you find out through testing. And this is a quick screenshot of the lifetime platform that I mentioned, where you can see what you have within your development environment, your production environment, or of course the screenshot just is limited with only development and production, but you generally have your QA or maybe a pre-prod or something like that. And you can see exactly what version of your applications and components are in any environment, and you can very easily deploy just by clicking that deploy button, selecting your applications, and creating a deployment plan. And then either your developers or your release management team or so on can execute the deployment. And it's also going to give you metrics that matter. So it's going to give you the performance of your screens, anything that's slowing down over time, and the ability to drill down to find what's going slow. Is it some database call that's in one of your screens or so on? So just kind of recapping everything there. It gives you unbeatable speed. You can integrate with everything, great UX, low code without constraints, built-in security and scalability, unbreakable deployment, and great analytics and metrics. And one last thing that I wanted to mention before I get into this use case is the Outsystems Forge. This is an open source community of OutSystems developers where you can find components, applications, etc. There's over 3,000 applications and components out there. So if you want to connect to something such as Google Maps or S3 or so on, someone's probably already done it and put it out there, and you can just pull that into your platform. So let's talk about a real world example. So Netlink, which is the company I work for, is a partner of OutSystems, and we are an implementation partner as well as a sales and training partner. And I want to tell you 5 ways that we accelerated app development for a nonprofit health organization. So first, and this applies to traditional development as well here, but think like a user first and then like a developer. So there's existing tools that were built to be generic, so we created, the company already had existing tools that were built to be generic. So we created workflow specific to the users to streamline usage for volunteers, professionals, and so on. We want to make development a journey. So as we discovered more and as priorities changed, we want to allow development to adjust with them instead of just staying into a locked-in set of requirements. We wanted to upgrade skill sets, not just the tech stack. So moving into a modern app dev platform, but also moving into agile methodologies and also embracing mobile devices. We wanted to always be delivering. So by using a mobile modern platform with built-in DevOps where we could just really quickly push to QA and production, we could streamline IT operations and frequently deliver updates to the users. And we didn't want to forget the technology that got us to where they were today. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we leveraged existing tools that already had data and services required to complete the project. What we didn't want is fragility, years of configuration without seeing any benefit, or a large monolithic solution, and OutSystems allowed us to gain that. And what we did want was things like company single sign-on, built-in integrations, security and logging standards, analytics, composable building blocks, so that way the users could, the citizen developers and business analysts could actually take existing things that we put together and build the applications that they needed, as well as the ability to abstract away external systems and have this impact analysis that I've talked about. So just a really short video to show you what it actually looks like. This is the development platform. And when you go to create an application, you can create one from scratch or from an existing application. Here, I'm creating a web application, putting in a name. And then when I go to create the app, I can choose to create a web app. I can also create some libraries, services, and so on, but just here showing what the development environment looks like. I can create some tables. So you can create a patient, a doctor, an association between patients and doctors, and so on. And OutSystems is also going to create tables in the backend database for all of these. So it's right now running on SQL Server, but you can also run it on top of Oracle. And from the automation standpoint, it's also going to try to predict what I'm trying to do. So I typed primary doctor ID there, and it's going to create an association to the doctor table because it analyzed what I've typed and is trying to predict what I want it to do. I can then create a screen from that data and start modifying it, add in tables, and do whatever I need. And I can then publish it. I should note that this video is not sped up. So what you see here is it's publishing this web application, and it's going to be live in my development environment here just in a moment with database tables, a list screen, and a detail screen that allows me to edit patients. So, and again, this is just kind of giving you a taste of what it's like. Obviously, there is way more to it than what I can show you in 2 minutes, but just wanted to show that to you. And here you can see it is completed. So, if you're interested in the platform, how do you get started? First, you can start for free using a personal environment and development studio using this link here. This will give you a free environment in the Outsystems cloud running in AWS that's yours forever. The learning paths on Outsystems are fantastic. They give you guided paths. And there's also tons of courses. They're all free right from the website. There's a great community team, and the forums are responded to very quickly if you have any questions. And speaking of questions, now I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask me anything. And I can tell you more about how the platform relates to healthcare operations or what it's like getting involved in the platform or so on.
Great presentation, Craig. Really appreciate that. Love seeing the demo there as well. And it's great to see or hear how this solution has helped real companies out there, solve problems and innovate. So we do have some questions for you. While we do that Q&A, I'm just going to bring up this poll for everyone out there in the audience that says, what additional information would you like about the Outsystems and NetLink solution? And we encourage everyone to respond to that. We appreciate your feedback. So let's start off with this one from Manas, I believe is how you say it, who's asking about security vulnerabilities. Is there any way to monitor security vulnerabilities in the code that's being created? Are there security scans, or what do you recommend around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things that are put in place automatically. Anything that's running in the Outsystems cloud gets automatically scanned by the Outsystems vulnerability scanner, which in the past I know used some HP security tools. I'm not sure exactly what it uses at the moment. Anything that you are running on premise, you can still use anything like your IBM AppScan or so on to scan the .NET code or binaries. There's also something called Architecture Dashboard, which is a tool that comes with the platform, and this is going to give you basically the equivalent of static code analysis, and it's going to look for any security vulnerabilities in your code, performance issues, architectural issues, so on. The development platform also will give you live warnings about things like if you are potentially going to have SQL injection attacks, it will inform you that what you've built is possibly subjected to that and tell you how to fix it.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of options there. I mean, security is so important these days, especially for healthcare organizations. There's another question here. Aaron is asking about when you create an application, what sort of database is it stored in? He's asking SQL. What would be the underlying database?
Yeah, so it runs on top of either SQL Server or Oracle. That's up to you. If you're in the Outsystems cloud, it also leverages the Amazon RDS, which gives you backup and restore capabilities built in. And then you can additionally connect to external databases to pull in tables from your existing data stores that are in Azure SQL, MySQL, DB2, Oracle, so on.
Okay, nice. Another question they're asking, what language is the code generated in?
Yeah, so it's running on top of .NET, and if you're building a web application, it's going to use React.js, going back to REST APIs that are running in ASP.NET. If you are building a mobile application, it's going to build a Cordova app, again using React.js and .NET Web APIs.
Got it. And then similar, I mean, in the same area, they're asking, what about API compatibility with the application that's created if you have some other applications out there that would need to interface with this?
Right. So just as it's extremely easy to connect to an existing API, you can also expose APIs right in the platform. In that logic tab from the demo, there's a section called integrations, and you can choose to expose REST or SOAP APIs and develop those to give access right into your application.
Excellent. What about the pricing model, as Seth is asking? How does that work?
So the pricing model is based on users, and there's a difference between internal users and external users. So external users come much cheaper than your internal users, where you're trying to support your actual employees. And I encourage you to reach out to the Outsystems sales team to get specifics.
Nice. And then next question, they're asking, how can we ensure that the code we create with this is going to be Hipaa compliant, or the applications will be Hipaa compliant?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously Hipaa compliance is a massively important thing. So there's a few options to you. First, if you are looking for infrastructure that supports Hipaa compliance, then you can deploy, like you said earlier, you can deploy to your own private cloud or to your own servers, and you can then choose to protect your data and everything else in whatever manner that you need. And that's generally when people need Hipaa compliance, what we recommend. The Outsystems cloud itself, you can of course build applications that are going to meet Hipaa compliance, but you don't have that access to the infrastructure at that point. Then as far as actually building the applications and ensuring that your application is not exposing any data that you wouldn't want to, that's more like traditional development, with ensuring that that you're not displaying health information to the wrong people, that you're checking to make sure that the right user has access to the right data, and the logic behind doing that is very similar to what you go through in traditional development. You just get to do it in a much faster way.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, Craig, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here in our live Q&A. I've put a number of more technical questions for you there in the Q&A widget. Hopefully you have time to check those out. A really great presentation again. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone out there in the audience for all the excellent questions. We do appreciate those. And like I said, I've routed those to Craig for all the questions we didn't have time to get to during the live session. Thank you to everyone who responded to the poll. We do appreciate your feedback there. Let's keep the EcoCast moving. And with that, I'm excited now to introduce you to our next presenter. Welcome, Mr. Zach Palakia, Senior Sales Engineer at Rubric. Zach, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great to have you on, Zach. Take it away.
Thank you. Again, my name is Zach Palakia. For 10 years, I've been a data protection specialist. And today, I'm going to kind of give you a slight overview on Rubric and how we're helping solve, taking the pain out of backup recovery and solving kind of some of the healthcare's top challenges. First, a little bit about what we see in healthcare today. Obviously, with COVID, there's been a huge increase in telehealth and remote work and the need to work remotely. In addition to that, organizations are starting to use more AI in the healthcare space to do things like, cross-reference blood work with, image data and things of that nature to help doctors be more accurate in their diagnosis. And then with all of these trends that we're seeing across the industry, what we're seeing in regards to those challenges is, one, the growth of data volume. Obviously, with patient care, there's a lot of information that has to be stored and recorded. And in addition to that, those AI apps that I spoke about generate tons and tons of data in order to correlate different data points. With that, obviously comes cost management as well, and pair that with the influx of ransomware attacks that are targeting healthcare organizations. Lots of operational complexity with still a lean amount of resources inside of healthcare organizations on the IT team, having to kind of basically do more with less. So today, the challenges we'll kind of talk about is how do I reduce my complexity, and with that, how am I getting time back? And then we'll also talk about simplifying other things like your cloud journey and your security posture, and then what else you can get out of your backup infrastructure. Just a safe harbor statement, the opinions expressed in this presentation is solely the personal opinions of the individual presenter and not necessarily reflect the opinions of Rubric. Always, work with a security professional for advice on your security posture. So the first things first, how do we reduce complexity? Interestingly enough, 30 to 40% of companies don't actually back up their data. In the healthcare space, that's highly unlikely. But in the world of agile IT, there are many different users creating new servers, shares, and databases. I spoke about those AI teams they're developing new AI products. Usually those are a siloed team. You might have an infrastructure team, a cloud team, and a backup team all on separate kind of teams inside your organization, and even maybe security organizations. And the problem is, even in the biggest Fortune 50 companies, because there are so many teams, there's not always a process for everyone to follow to configure backups. And there's a lot of scenarios where someone might create a new workload or application or VM and forget to back it up. And even when there's well-defined process, there's always the possibility of user error. One of the great examples I like to say is, I've walked into plenty of organizations and asked a room full of people, are you using cloud today? And I get the response, no, we're not. And then someone else at the other side of the table says, yes, we are. We're using it for this, 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 and this. And it just kind of goes back to the silo of IT. So we'll talk about how Rubric solves these problems. A traditional approach to backup is essentially a legacy approach. So each organization healthcare organization is going to have RPOs that they set, RTOs, archive policies, and retention requirements for compliance, right? And if you give all that information to 3 different backup admins or even 3 different backup products, each one of them is going to have their own logic, their own best practice, and maybe tribal knowledge. And what they'll do with that information is configure backup jobs with a group of different types of objects. Then they'll set up schedules, and then blackout times, exclusions, some tape, and then maybe garbage collection and resource reclamation periods. And you can't kick off, let's say, like 2,000 VMs at one time, right? So what you'll see organizations do is then create another set of backup jobs and schedules, and then another set for load balancing on the back end. So your VMware environment might have backups at 8 p.m., 10 p.m., and midnight to kind of space things out a little bit. And then if you add in workloads like SQL, Oracle, and NAS, usually there's a dedicated policy for all those different things, or maybe even cloud. With this comes a lot of complexity. So let's talk about how we get our time back. With Rubric, we have SLAs instead of schedules. So if an organization gives us their RPOs, their archive, and their retention, no matter who uses it, it's simply put into an SLA. And the way this works is this is what our SLA looks like. It's a screenshot from our UI. And on the left-hand side is basically our RPOs. How much data are you willing to lose? Or in other words, how often do you have to run a backup? So if, let's say my RPO is every 4 hours, I can simply put 4 hours in here in the window, and then I'll do a backup every 4 hours rather than creating a backup job or schedule for 8 p.m., noon, or midnight rather, 4 a.m., 8 a.m., and noon, right? So you can see it's a lot easier. It allows me to stay with one policy instead of multiple policies and schedules that I might have to add every new workload to 5 or 6 policies to get what I want. I can kind of add it to one policy regardless to here to match my requirements. Now, we also do load balancing on the back end using VMware APIs so that we don't affect how many your data stores or your server environment. We make sure that we're only kicking off enough VMs that we don't do any impact production in any way. So the load balancing is all automated for us. And then for each frequency of backup, we also have a retention. So we can just define how long we want to keep our hourlies, how long do we want to keep our weeklies, how long our monthlies and yearlies. And what's also interesting is our dailies. Our hourlies become our dailies become our monthlies, and our monthlies become our yearlies. And Rubric is smart enough to actually figure out, hey, if we missed a day of backups or an hour of backups, I'm just going to take the next one that was successful, and I'm going to make that my monthly backup or my yearly backup. Where most backup administrators have to log in on the first of the month, maybe the first of the week, and make sure that their weekly job ran or their monthly job ran, because a lot of scenarios that might go to a different archive. Or a different medium. Maybe sometimes it goes to tape and sometimes it goes to storage. So we're solving that complexity by doing it directly in one policy. And then in that policy, we also set our replication. So if I want to replicate to another Rubric cluster, or if I want to archive off to either on-prem NFS or object store or the public cloud, I can do that as well. And also a single SLA can hold VMs, databases, NAS workloads, and in some circumstances, even cloud workloads. So again, I have one policy. It's really easy for anyone that's building or automating deployments of new machines to pick one SLA because that's all I have to choose from, right? It makes life a lot easier. And again, with the Rubric AI, we're taking all the kind of architecture and hard work out of scheduling this stuff out of it and automating that for you on the back end. So once we've done backups, another thing I find really interesting from a compliance standpoint. So anyway, I had a customer that basically every quarter would spend 2 weeks taking all their backup emails and putting them into an Excel spreadsheet. And that's how they would tell their management that they were meeting all their RPOs. And it was very time consuming. With Rubric, you can see here we have an actual report where we're running almost 16,000 jobs per day. And that's a lot of data to kind of filter through and provide a report to a director level. So what we invented is this compliance report. We only actually have 650 objects. So what that means is maybe for RPO reasons, we're doing backups of one of these objects multiple times a day. Maybe they have multiple disks. Maybe they have a SQL database or multiple SQL databases on them. So we provide this nice and easy report. I can click on and say, hey, all of my objects have hit the RPOs that I set for my organization on the hourly, weekly, monthly, and yearly level, as well as the retentions that are associated with them. And then in the bottom right, we also have what I particularly like. With a lot of backup products out there, storage is a separate product, right? And I have run into multiple organizations that run out of space on their backup platform because they're not really thinking about it from day-to-day perspective. So at Rubric, we're able to tell you based on your change rate, which we also gather for you, you can see that on the screen, we can tell you exactly how many days until you're going to run out of space on the Rubric platform. And you can remedy that either by buying more storage or changing your archive policies to move that data to another cheaper place. At Rubric, we also work to automate everything. So we integrate with Servicenow. I've had a lot of organizations say, teams out of the backup teams are like, hey, I don't want to learn another product because I might not use it for 6 months when I need to do a restore. So Servicenow is a great way to handle that because I can do all my workflows through Servicenow. Even when I'm deploying new workloads, I can auto protect those new workloads as I create them. Same thing with VRO, VRA. I can do monitoring via Splunk and check audit requests of like what users are doing inside of Rubric. And I can also, for my EMRs and EHR systems, I can do scripting of the backups with things like Chef, Puppet, and Ansible. And if I'm doing things in cloud, you can automate via Terraform. So next thing we'll talk about is how to simplify your cloud journey. I think a lot of healthcare are still a little bit cloud adverse, but I've seen an uptick in organizations looking to at least utilize it on some level. So the first way we can do that is just leveraging the cheap and deep nature of object storage in the cloud. With Rubric, we can back up data and then tier your older data that you're going to retain just for compliance and governance data up into the cloud. Once that data has been tiered off, we can actually use it to spin up VMs in Azure or AWS and use that for cloud migration purposes or DR use cases. And then if you're a little more mature in the cloud and you've already got workloads up there, or during your migration you want to start protecting them, you can also protect Azure, AWS, and GCP natively through our cloud native protection with zero infrastructure, I might add, which is pretty awesome when you talk about cost control in the cloud. Next, we want to talk about increasing your security posture without adding too much complexity. We believe that if you're going to assess a backup product, you should be thinking about the following things. First is audit and compliance reporting. You want to be able to see what users are doing when they're logged in, how often they're trying to log in, if they have failed login attempts. So we're able to gather that information and port it off to something like a Splunk or Servicenow for you to do ticket creation or what have you. In addition, you should add an encryption both in flight and at rest, and then some type of SAML integration with MFA or TOTP. If you're doing any banking, probably would not use a bank that didn't have multi-factor authentication. If backup is the last line of defense in ransomware, which it really is, then you should have a product that's fully secure. And if you don't have an MFA provider today, TOTP is actually free through Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator, and it works with all your LDAP accounts or AD accounts and the local accounts on the box as well. And lastly, we would like every backup product to have robust RBAC. We believe in least privilege, and that each user should only have access to what they need access to. With that, we're also raising the stakes a little bit with some things that we do that we find really unique. First is immutability. So we achieve immutability through a two-step process. The first is a logical air gap via a zero trust design, in which case, in order to get to our file system, we don't have it on open protocols like NFS or SMB, because if you think that your production NFS or SMB shares aren't safe in the event of a ransomware attack, then your backup data, storing your backup data there probably is not a good idea either. So in order to get to our file system, we have secure RPC calls, and that's the only way that you can talk to it. It's a lot harder for hackers to get to that, especially in a zero trust world. It's also an append-only file system, meaning that even if you were to get through all those layers of security, the file system itself was designed so that you cannot do delete or change commands. You can only append files that allow you to track changes. So you couldn't modify the data even if you want to, which assures that your data will be there and be available when it's time to recover. Lastly, is the third piece in this whole puzzle is the retention lock SLA, which is FINRA Rule 4511 FCC 17A for FWORM compliant. It essentially means if I turn this on one of my SLA policies, no one can modify the retention, the backup frequency, or anything else inside the SLA. You can't remove objects from it either. So it means, you know, you're safe from internal bad actors, or if somebody were to get access to the device, per se. And then we also have a hardened platform with a stripped down version of Linux that only has the commands that we think are required to run and only signed Rubric services can run on the box as well. And that's straight out of the box. There's no configuration needed for any of that stuff. And that's why, but I also point out, you know, immutability is a must in a proper defense against ransomware. Some other ways that we're up-leveling the conversation and ransomware is instant recovery. So we actually did a POC recently where we were able to do 700 VM live mounts in 1 hour and 27 minutes, which is really impressive. Like, that's, you know, borderline replication speeds. So we can recover very quickly. And then I already mentioned the immutable file system, which makes sure that your data will be available if a ransomware attack occurs. And then the third way we're up-leveling is we're actually able to detect ransomware in an environment based on what files are being accessed and anomalies within the files. We can also scan for entropy, which means encryption on a file. And then we'll give you a UI version of the affected files, so you can recover just the files that were infected, rather than restore the whole VM itself or the whole NAS share, which can be very time-consuming in general, and you may actually delete some good data along the way. And that brings us finally to what more can I get out of my backup. Just like with our ransomware detection, we can also detect Hipaa, PCI, GDPR, CCPA type information. So all your sensitive information that you've backed up, whether it's on a VM, Windows system, Linux system, or a NAS, the more data that's in your environment, the harder it is to find these types of data. And then these regulations are constantly in flux. So they become harder and harder to make sure that you're actually hitting all your regulations and requirements. And obviously you're doing this with usually the same amount of resources as the data grows and as the regulations become more important. So it's harder for your teams to be able to achieve. And again, this is completely agentless. So in your VMware environment, I don't have to install anything in production. All the scans happen on the backup data. Same thing can be said for our ransomware detection. It's all on the back end. And then from a NAS perspective, this tends to be a challenge with most healthcare organizations. We've got one of the best NAS solutions on the market, in my opinion. We can scan billions of files, and we can move billions of files, and also giving you those robust indexes all along the way. With that, you know, the closing statement really is, you know, your data protection should do more. A lot of these data protection solutions are really expensive. And they don't do much other than the couple hours a night they're doing backups if you're not doing restores during the day, right? So you should look for a solution that does more than just backup. You should look for something that's helping you with cloud mobility, helping you automate, helping your data governance solution, and giving you something to find Hipaa data. And then cyber resiliency, detecting ransomware, being secure against it, things of that nature. I've also got a bunch of white papers available if you want to take a look at any of these resources. And there is the ability to register for virtual demos. We also have what we call Camp Rubrics, where you can play with this gear yourself, try it out, see how the workflows go, etc. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Forward. It's coming up on the 18th, and to the 20th, it's our user group. And so we'll have a bunch of keynotes, major announcements about our newest features, and we'll have informative breakout sessions to kind of educate you on different topics. And that's all I've got. Don't back up, go forward. Sorry about the audio issues.
Great job, Zach. I really appreciate that. We've got some questions for you. While we do that, we've just brought up the poll question for everyone out there in the audience. We want your feedback. What additional information would you like about the Rubric solution? So let's see, Zach, first question I see that came in here, they're asking about is Rubric application aware?
Yes, so we can achieve that multiple different ways, depending on what you want to do. We have a great integration with SQL and Oracle, but we can also be application aware from like a VMware snapshot capability. We do VSSQSs as well, so we have multiple ways to achieve that.
Excellent. And then there's a couple questions here about the scalability of the solution as the backup data grows over time, and maybe that kind of ties back also to where would the backup data be stored, in a hardware appliance on premises or in the cloud or both?
Yeah, so we have multiple flavors, both on-prem and in the cloud. What I really love about Rubric is it's a hyper-converged solution. So as you scale the amount of data in your environment, you're getting more and more resources. So for example, each brick, which is a 2U appliance with 4 nodes, can do anywhere from 20 to 30,000 IOPS. So if I expand that, I now have 40 to 60,000 IOPS. So now I have more performance to do restores, right, or to do more backups. And we size them differently as well as with any hyperconverged solution. And that's what allows us to do things like 700 VM live mounts in an hour.
Wow, that's amazing. Next question, what about integration here? The question is specifically around how easy would it be to integrate Rubric with existing ERP APIs like SAP HANA?
Yeah, so we have a fully certified SAP HANA solution. I think we can get a white paper out to you on that, or if you want to reach out, we can find one. But we have one fully certified on SAP's website.
Nice. And then let's see, next question here. They say, my security team has tools that do ransomware detection. So why do I need that in my backup solution?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you think about it, I've seen tools print out a list of 100,000 files that may have been detected by ransomware. If you're a backup administrator and you get a list of 100,000 files, are you really going to sit there one by one and restore them? Probably not, right? So where you need to close the gap is the infrastructure team might have tools, but when you're given a report, what are you going to do with that report? So basically the way we see it is if you can have a UI that already has those files detected and you can cross-reference it between the two tools, you now have a solution where you can not only detect in real time, but also recover very quickly.
Absolutely, and that recovery is so critical, especially when you have a ransomware type event. So, all right. Well, Zach, I'm afraid that's all the time we have in our live Q&A, but I've put some more technical questions there for you in the queue. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you.
And thank you to Rubric for supporting the event. Check out the handout that's there in your audience console. It's actually a PDF resource called Take the Pain Out of Backup and Recovery. And this is specifically around using Rubric in a healthcare organization. There's a lot of statistics. There's details about how Rubric has been used at a lot of different healthcare organizations to protect their data. So make sure that you check out that resource. Looks like it's perfectly suited for today's topic. All right, if you haven't answered the poll question, I appreciate you doing so now. I'll leave that up while I announce our first Amazon $500 gift card winner. This is going out to Michelle Berber from California. Congratulations, Michelle Berber from California. We've got 2 more gift cards still to give out on the event today, and don't forget about the best question prizes that we're running as well. All right, thanks to everyone who responded there to the poll question. Let's keep the EcoCast moving, which means it's now my pleasure to introduce our next presenter. Welcome, Mr. Mike Oakes, Senior Pre-Sales Engineer at Atempo. Mike, are you there?
I am, David. How are you doing today?
Great, Mike. It's good to have you back on again. Take it away.
Hey, thanks. All right. Well, hey, thanks, David. And again, thanks to the team for inviting us here to participate. Also, real quickly, thanks everyone who joined, and I hope you're staying safe and healthy, especially in the current COVID crisis we're going. As David mentioned, my name is Mike Oakes. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect with Atempo, and I've been in the compute, storage, data preservation, and protection about 30 plus years now. And when I do these, what I'd like to do real quickly is a brief introduction about Atempo, followed by like a closer look at our disaster recovery protection products for the healthcare market space. So that being said, who's Atempo, right? What is Atempo? So Atempo, we bring to bear over 30 plus years now of experience in the field of data protection, data migration, management. As you notice on the slide here, 2,000 plus customers worldwide, north of 200 employees. And our solutions are designed to basically protect, store, facilitate movement, provide easy searchable functionality, a quick retrieval of data of assets when needed from wherever needed. And I want to put a quick note in here. These solution sets I'm talking about, we are a software company. We don't provide any hardware. We do have guides, sizing guidelines, and so forth. And I'm not talking about big hardware because you can reuse your own, repurpose what you have. It's basically, we're talking about a virtual machine with some vCPUs in memory, depending on the workflow, base metal, 1U, 2 CPUs, some cores, a little bit of memory. So not large boxes. And again, you get to repurpose what you have at the facility site, as well as if you need to grow the solution, there's no more cost from us for what we call data movers or agents. You simply just need to add those. You already have the software and you're good to go. So that being said, why did I make a few comments about Atempo beforehand? So what happened some years back, we took a look at the industry from the data management protection challenges, so to speak. We saw some crucial things we thought needed to be addressed. Of course, the big one for all of us these days, right, is data security integrity. How do I keep it protected? How do I ensure it's protected? How do I ensure its authenticity? But on top of that, coupled with that, right, full audit logging, right, audit trail audit logging for all data accesses, right? And it comes into play too, not just because, you want to know what's going on from day to day. What happens? You have to do some forensic analysis because something happened in your system. Somebody did something, a record disappeared or something along those lines. So logging all those accesses, logging all those data transactions was a crucial element to have in the product. You'll see 2 things here, multiple vendors, multiple file systems. So most organizations have a homogeneous environment, different types of data silos. How to bring all those together, and we call a heterogeneous architecture. Now we're file-based, not block, so we work on a file system-based level. But also, we saw the need for cloud or on-premise storage, right? Depending on what your business model is and your security requirements, it may not be able to go to public cloud. You want to keep it in private cloud. So how do you utilize that effectively and efficiently within your architecture? As well as the big one at the bottom, which also goes to security again, is air-gapped storage. A lot of people, when you think air-gapped, they'll think tape, right? Taking tape, having a backup or an archive or some other type of copy of the data, pulling it out of the system and putting it somewhere in a vault, sending it out to Iron Mountain or some other place, right? So I'm fully protected and I'm air-gap protected, so nobody can get to my data after the fact once it's been actually protected and preserved. So that being said, how do we do that? Miria, there's basically 4 pillars, and we're actually adding a 5th, and it's an analytics package. I'll talk about that coming up. But these 4 pillars here that you see on the screen, the 12 o'clock and the 6 o'clock position, this is what we've been doing for 30 plus years now, 30 years now, right? Backup and archive, data preservation, data protection. The product has evolved over time, adding new feature sets, new enhancements, but we've been doing this now for almost 30 years. We added, coupled to the left and the right, you'll see at the 9 o'clock position something called Miria for data moving. Think of this as synchronization, replication, manual copy, manual moves, right? All the things you may want to have automated and also manual within the tool that can interface both to archiving and backup projects if need be. And then to the right, you'll see something called Miria for migration. Think of this as you're actually purchasing, but only for a set amount of time, maybe 6 months to do a migration because you need to collapse infrastructure. You need to safely and securely migrate data off of an older piece of storage, some legacy piece of storage, something newer, bigger, faster, better analytics in it. Right? This is the tool for that. You use it for a set amount of time, and we train people up to do this all the time themselves or through one of our partners. You have a license for the software, you have a license for the capacity moving, and after maybe it's 6 months, it'll shut down and be done. So think of that as like a term base for the length of a project, where the other 3 pillars you see there are perpetual, and now we're moving more to a subscription model where it's support year over year and you license for the product. So how do we do some of those things I talked about in the previous slides? How do we improve or reduce that window of vulnerability for data or detect anomalies? There's some tools we do under the hood that come with the product natively. You'll see here it mentions a couple of things. One of them is data movement, parallelization of tasks, and multi-threading. One of the biggest things to do when trying to archive or backup or get data between 2 points, there's always that window of vulnerability till something's secured on the other side. We can, while we're looking for data, we'll say we're scanning a file system. We can, there's some algorithms and some tunables or dials under the hood that you can set to say, after so much time that's run looking for data, or so many files have been found to be acted upon or moved or backed up or archived, or so much data, so it's the capacity. Fire up a job, start that transaction, and continue looking for more data. And we'll do this, and it's basically the notion of a task and subjobs. And you can set X amount of subjobs under the hood. We can then pool, we call those data movers or agents, and those are what are moving data between point A and point B. If I pool these together, I can start setting jobs across each one of those every time I reach one of those thresholds. So now I'm moving data, I'm looking for data, I'm parallelized across my data movers, and now under the hood, I mentioned vCPUs and cores earlier, in some of the architecture, we can start to turn those on the data movers into copy engines. So I parallelized across my data movers, I'm multi-threading through my data movers, I'm thereby reducing my data transaction window and reducing my window of vulnerability dramatically down. Coupled with that, these 2 tools at the bottom, one called Snapshot, one called Fast Scan. We have the ability, if we can talk to the API of a product that does snapshotting, maybe it's an Isilon, maybe it's a Cumulo, NetApp, GPFS, something else. We can have, when we're walking that file system, the first seed, the first time we do some type of transaction, take a snapshot, and we'll walk that snapshot to validate it. Once it's validated, at the end of the job, we'll mark it good. The very next time you have to run, we'll take another snapshot. And then we'll use the Fast Scan tool to say, give me a delta compare of the differences. I don't need to walk the file system. The snapshot will tell me. No tree walking of the file system anymore. So they take 5 minutes. We get that change list from the appliance. We import it, and we parse it out immediately to the data movers for action to start moving the data. Again, why? Dramatically reducing that window of vulnerability. Gets your data protected that much quicker. So there's one other tool. And this one's really cool. It's called SnapStore. Now think of this as I can use my backup as an active, basically, DR. In this case, what you see here on the screen is I have users, finance, everything, management, analytics, all running on my production storage in the middle. I have a backup repository off to the right, the little green disk and 2 blue ones. I'm using that now, maybe the same size as my production, and maybe smaller, it may be dissimilar. Maybe I'm going from a Cumulo to a NetApp or a GPFS to a Cumulo. I just need to be able to talk to the APIs. If I can do that, in the event of a failure, I have an automatic backup running all the time going to this backup storage. Should a failure happen for some particular reason, nefarious act, network goes down, an array goes offline, what can happen is now you've lost access. The IT staff can immediately, depending on how you do your authentication and access to storages, can say, okay, point to this new storage and immediately start running on it. You get two benefits. One, of course, immediate uptime, right, or immediate recovery. But two, think of this as also a time navigation backup copy that you can also use to pull files back, whole directories, or reconstitute a file system from a particular point in time. But what I said previously, though, you've bought yourself some time. You can now figure out what happened at production. Was it really a nefarious act? Did something else happen? Just lost the network connectivity. Let's get it back up online, or let's have to rebuild it completely from scratch. You reconstitute that file system. Once you do, you can start to say, now build back all the data that belongs in that reconstituted structure. Right? And because it has a notion of time navigation, maybe something bad happened at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. You want to go back till midnight on Tuesday. You set it that way. You set to say recover at this point. It'll reconstitute the file system back down. Once that's done, even though you're still running on the NAS backup, so you're doing both in parallel, right? Parallelization is important. Once it's done, you repoint your users back to your normal production, and you reinitiate SnapStore going the other way. Fully protected. And on top of that, if you want to have air gap protection, you can also be putting stuff out to tape. We have notions that we call storage manager containers. A container is just a location to put data. These locations have independent hashes. You can have a global if you want. I always recommend independent hash for security and data integrity, because if any one file doesn't match, you can pull it from somewhere else. So coupled with that, there's a new GUIs we're coming out with. We're getting away from the notion of having a 6-in client running on a laptop that you have to manage, right? Get to an HTTPS web-based client. You could be an administrator, you could be assigned as a user. When you log in, you only see those things that you're allowed to have access to. In this case, I just want to show you a quick example of this. Miria, this is a backup UI. You see easy move at the top. Think of that as Miria copy, sync, and move. You have migration in the middle. That's that one at 3 o'clock we saw for migration. And you have at the bottom repositories. Think of that as archive and backup. In this case, we have a repository we want to go into called video backup. And you see there's a file down there called dinner.mov or diner.mov, however you want to pronounce it. You decided, I want to go get that file for some reason. And you can search on these. You see a search button in the upper right. You can start to search on file names, owner, criteria, all kinds of information. When you go to select that file, you notice there's 7, 8 instances in the database. You want a particular one. You may not want the latest. You may want to go back 4. And you may want to put it other than where it originally came from. You can all do this under the tool. You just basically select that file. Right? You'll see here, this is the notion that's moved into that. I said it integrates with Easy Sync, or copy, move, and sync integrates with backup and archive. You can select what location you want it to go to. In this case, we're going to move it to a Windows machine different than its original location. You basically do a pull down, select where you want it to go to, update the basket or validate the basket down below after you add it, and it will go off and move the data. I probably went through pretty quickly, but also if there's hashes assigned with that, you'll get hashes. You'll get all kinds of metadata information for that particular file when you select on it. So you can take a look at things too. If you're concerned about the hash, you're concerned about the date, the time, the owner, the group, whatever, you can start looking at all that information. Now, coupled with that, I mentioned we're adding analytics to the package, and this is coming in Q4 of this year. And we did this for some very specific reasons. You can't understand the data landscape if you don't fully have a picture of it, right? What are my data silos? Where are they at? How are they located, right? So we're putting that in. This is coming with the tool there's no added cost. It's your data. You need to be able to manage it. We're a data management protection organization, company. So, and this is just one example of a dashboard. This one happens to be looking at time and age and reparations, but you can build your own dashboards. And this was important because we wanted to put into the product some very specific things. You can't do analytics without understanding some things. And to understand that, you first have to discover, right? I have to discover all of my infrastructure. Not just things a tempo currently has access to that we're doing archive and backup, or the Miria is doing archive and backup to, but you can go out and look at all of your storage, basically putting a fingerprint on that. in getting all the, signing a fingerprint to it and pulling all that information in so you can start the next phase, right? And that's analyzing the data, right? And I'm going to talk about what gets analyzed and what you can do in a second. But once that analysis has happened, you need to be able to decide on what to do, right? I manually want to archive things, or I want to tag things. I automatically want to have things happen. That all goes into the act phase. Now, release 1, everything you can tag, you do everything manual movement. Release 2, we will allow you to start to make business decisions and say, I have certain criteria that are being met, and I want this metadata to be fed into, this analysis fed into a decision model to start acting upon it automatically. Now, some of that action and discovery gets into when you start to analyze what's hot, what's cold, right? Localization of data, data usage and age, and all these kind of tie together a little bit. And I'll use this as an example because maybe I want to start saying I have a production storage or production storages, and anything that's on them over 6 months, we never touch. It does not need to be sitting on there, but I need it backed up. I need it protected. I need hashes with it. I need to understand it. But I want to move it out to an archive, and I want to delete it immediately once I do, or I want to move it out to multiple copies somewhere and maybe immediately delete it off my production or wait 30 days. You get the choice. You can make those decisions in your business model and assign those algorithms, those variables. But anything that's 6 months and earlier, I want to back it up. I want to keep it here. I want a hot copy of it so I can use it, right? You can start to set up those business models to start acting upon that information. Duplicate files, there's no sense of keeping 17 copies if you only need 4 for your business model. And maybe it's 4, but in 2 are in secured locations. The big one here is detect anomalies, just one of the big ones. You don't need to know on a file system when something has gone right. 90% of the time, things go great, that's good. Administrators are busy, IT personnel are busy. But you need to know when something doesn't happen. The classic example I use is on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock, I'm supposed to get a 2 terabyte dump from a particular location, or something is supposed to happen. I'm getting a dump from a microscopy examination or something. It doesn't happen. Now I need to know that. So the tool, this analytics tool, is constantly learning about your data, learning about your data patterns. And I want to be specific about something. None of this data leaves your facility with the analytics. This goes back to security, data integrity. It's your data. Nothing goes out to the cloud for analysis. It all stays on site. You keep control of it, and that's important. And the last thing it talks about here is data tagging, group insights, run tasks, and so forth. Talked about that. I can set things. I want to tag things for archive, tag things for backup, delete, copy, move, sync. You can do all this within the analytics product, and then it will be fed into, in the second release, automated processes within Miria. Why did we do all that? Because of what we saw early on, right? Data protection, large data protection. Be able to manage multiple petabytes, hundreds of petabytes of data, right? That security I just talked about had to be inherent, and it has to be met within the product. Availability, that's a given. There's nothing worse that at 3 in the morning you have an issue and you can't get to that copy of the data, that backup, that archive. So things need to be accessible 7 by 24, 365, right? It's any data, anywhere, anytime. You need to be able to access it. Talked about analytics. That's to understand your data landscape and basically build a model that fits the best utilization for your organization. You need to understand that, and that goes straight into cost savings. The cost savings, think about if I have storages in multiple locations and they're busy from 6 in the morning to 6 at night, but 6 at night to 6 in the morning, they're completely idle. Can I use them for something else? Can they be a short-term whip bin for somebody that's running in a different area or different time zone? So efficiently using the infrastructure that you have without having to go out and repurchase new infrastructure. So with that, got one more slide here. So why us? Right? So I just talked about it. We've been doing this 30 years now, managing multi-petabyte, 100 petabyte data management, data protection, archive, backup. Right? Again, global player, but right below that, wide range of supported technologies. What does this mean? So taking those homogeneous data silos, infrastructures, somebody's cloud, somebody's NAS, somebody's file system, and putting them together to be used in a heterogeneous environment to meet the workflow requirements, demands of the organization efficiently, reducing window of vulnerability, reducing user impact, right? The user experience. Important feature set, right? Cost effective. If I can reuse what I have instead of have to go out there and basically do a forklift upgrade when a new project rolls in or new data sets are showing up, that's important. I get to save money. I get return on my investment on what I have. Analytics to understand the data. If you don't understand the data landscape, you cannot manage it. You can't make those important critical business decisions. And the last one, and I mentioned this again, 3 in the morning. We have organizations in Europe, the United States, and Asia. When you have an issue and you need our help, you need someone to be there. And this is critical. Again, it goes back to any data, anywhere, anytime. We want to be there. There's nothing worse than feeling left alone when you have to get to a piece of data, and for some reason you're not able to access it. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to my friend David for any questions.
Great presentation, Mike. We do appreciate that. We do have some questions for you, and while we do that, I've got a couple of poll questions out here for the audience. First question on the screen now is, what's the volume of your petascale data set? And I'll leave that up while we take your questions. So don't forget about our best question prize as well. I see lots of good questions that have already come in. We appreciate that. Let's start off with this one. They're asking about, is the solution application aware? Does it have insight into the applications that are accessing this data or the applications that it's protecting?
So it's aware of the data. It can be aware of the applications from the analytic standpoint, but from a backup and archive standpoint, we're concerned about the data and getting that pushed out to where it needs to be.
Got it. Okay. Another question here. What's the best practice or minimum requirement to run a tempo if they were to deploy it?
All depends on the workflow, but you can start off very small. It's usually one server. Like I said, a 1U box, we'll call it a server. 2 CPUs, X amount of cores in memory. The data movers, they're the same configuration but less disk space. And one thing to note, if you need to grow with your workflow, adding data movers from us is free. Once you have the software, you can add virtual machines or base metal machines as data movers to fill out your workflow as needed. Starts fairly cheap.
Got it. Okay, yeah, that sounds easy. And then there's another question here. Can this help to either protect from or recover after a ransomware infection?
Yes, so there's a couple of things that happen. With the analytics packages coming, we're taking a look at crypto lockers and data patterns that are happening within your, say, a data silo, all your data silos. And we'll recognize, we know some patterns of some, but we'll start to recognize other patterns. And we'll start to warn you, hey, you need to start thinking about these files have been infected, or you need to start bringing some files back and deleting these because there's an issue. With the time navigation feature that's available within SnapStore and all of our backup products, you can go back in time if for some reason a file, some ransomware got in the system and at 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, you can back that whole thing back up to, say, 12 o'clock that night and basically wipe everything out and reconstitute that if need be, or a particular file. You can get granular. It can be a whole file system or down to a single file.
Excellent. And then next question here, does Miria have any size or scaling limitations?
No. Like I said, we do hundreds of petabytes now, and the data movers can scale out to be used as you need. Some of our biggest workflow right now, a couple hundred petabytes, and about 20 plus data movers doing different functions.
Nice, nice. And then is the time navigation an add-on feature, or is it something that has to be licensed separately?
No, it's included.
Right.
The only thing that you have to license with the product, think about, is I'm doing a particular workflow, whether it be backup or archive, and the capacity of it. Everything else pretty much is included within the product. There's not extra fees added on.
Excellent. And then what type of data can be collected with the analytic discovery agent?
So basically all information that pertains to the metadata of a file, right? That includes file size, who owns it, UID, GID if you're thinking POSIX, ACL information if you're thinking Windows, and any other gatherable information. There's a list of them, and it's more than I can talk about here on one call. But you get a full picture of that file and everything it's done since its life cycle in the appliance.
Excellent. And then, let's see, here's a question. Do you support Wasabi or Azure storage?
Both. So Wasabi, Azure, GCP, any type of S3, Swift, AWS, including Glacier and Deep Glacier. So we're pretty much across all the major players, as well as you can use generic on-site stuff.
Okay. And then I want to call everyone's attention again to the slides window there. I just brought up the second poll question that just says, what additional information would you like about the Atempo solution? Another question here. Does the analytics package help with tiering?
Yes, because if you know where data is and where it doesn't need to be, you can start basically putting things into, whether it be manual or automated, to say, this cold data doesn't need to be on tier 1, put it on tier 2, or maybe put it on tier 2 and send a copy to tape or cloud or some other storage manager container. So you get pretty granular of what you move and where you move it, and tiering it all the way down through its data lifecycle.
Great. And then what about, can the analytics package also help with data sprawl? I know a lot of companies, they have a primary data set, then a secondary, then a testing, and then they create multiple copies of that, and then over time, their data set size has just exploded.
Right. So basically, you're talking about replicas, right? So how many copies do I have of in all these different locations? And you can have dashboards that go through and show you all that. You can have actions upon that. I want to only keep 4 copies instead of 44 copies. You can decide where they go, right? So it gets, again, pretty granular on what you can look at. And again, making those key decision or business metrics that best fit the organization, so don't keep so many copies laying around.
Nice. And then what's the licensing model for Miria? Is it based on the amount of data that's managed, or how does that work?
So from a perspective of, and I'm going to talk about the archive, backup, copy, sync, and move, it's all just basically based on capacity. You license the server, you license the capacity and the workflow you need to do, and after that, everything else is pretty much included, right? You support, if it's in your subscription model, support's included and so forth.
Nice. And then there's a question here, how does Miria's data protection compare to other data protection solutions in the industry? What do you feel really makes it unique?
So the first thing I'll say is I talked about this earlier. So multiple buckets, different hashes, and you choose the hashes, right? So you can protect that data going up, and also we'll read those independent hashes coming down to always guarantee the data integrity. Coupled with that, on transaction, I see something on the screen about, how do we ensure data validity moving between 2 targets. We'll use XX hash 64 in line when we're doing transfers or migrations or movements to check the data on a read. We'll check the data again on just after we write to make sure it matches the hash. We'll do it twice. We'll calculate that hash twice. We'll also, if you need to, we'll encrypt that data in flight. So if you have 2 locations, New York and London, I have data and I need to move to the other. You have data movers on both sides, or agents. You can tell us to encrypt on the ingest of the data. We'll decrypt when we get it to the other side and apply it down to that particular storage. Coupled with what's coming later this year for storages that can't do encryption at rest, we're going to start putting it in the product so you can do encryption at rest natively through us instead of having to do it natively on the appliance because it doesn't support it.
Very cool. Some innovative features there. I like that. All right. Well, Mike, I'm afraid that's all the time we have in our live Q&A, but really great presentation. Again, thank you so much for being on.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks, David.
And thanks to Atempo for supporting the EcoCast today. For more information on Atempo, check out the handout that's available there in your audience console. And of course, as Mike said, check out, I'll put the URL back up here on the screen, atempo.com for more information. There's Mike's contact information as well if you have direct questions on the Miria solution. All right. Thank you, everyone, for responding to the poll question. It's now time to move on to our next presentation. I'm excited to introduce Vishaka Sant, Global Head of Healthcare Providers at Servicenow. Vishaka, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Thanks so much. So, hi, everyone. Vishaka Sant. And before I get started here, I just want to humanize this conversation about IT workflows and how to master your workflows in healthcare with our company manifesto at Servicenow is work matters. It's where we spend a third of our lives. It shapes who we are, how we feel, and how we interact with the world. So we must create great work experiences that bring out the best in us. While we're at our best, we make everything around us better. Our jobs, our coworkers, and our employers benefit. And our lives benefit even more. Because by making the world of work better for people, we make the world of work better too. And, you know, I really resound with this because I feel as though it encapsulates the essence of what Servicenow is. We are an enterprise platform company. We integrate disparate systems, silos, and bring together systems of teams and processes to help workflow work better. And we're truly a platform that spans the entire enterprise. So with that, you know, I'm happy to be here. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the forces that are driving digital transformation. I'm a healthcare native. I was with Kaiser Permanente for 11 years before joining Servicenow about 6 months ago. Prior to that, with Texas Health Resources and Baylor Scott & White in Texas. And I've seen the trends in healthcare, right? Everything from, you know, the growing impact of consumerism, you know, getting personalization to a point where, you know, it's at our fingertips. Our patients expect it. And now we're also, consumerism is what we get measured on through HCAHPS and Net Promoter Scores. Significant demographic shifts, right? We have an abundance of populations that are moving that are also being faced with this digital divide. And how are we able to offer seamless experiences for those patients as well? The growing financial pressures, COVID didn't help, but it was really a catalyst that helped us propel forward and get to a point where some of the enablement and adoption was kind of forced for virtual health, telehealth, and some of those trends are here to stay. You're going to, you know, more care is going to be moved into the home. And what are our organizations doing to help support that? The evolving competition and business models, you see various entrants into this new space, and a lot of these retail clinics, ambulatory care centers, you know, all of the different people that are looking at getting into healthcare, how are they going to make it easier and better? And it's difficult, right, with this notion of everything's going to interoperate. There's standards that are helping, bodies that are helping, and how do you stay compliant amidst all of the numerous security breaches that are happening? So what this ends up being is that, you know, most organizations are actually stuck in the old way of actually working. We have customer requests, incidents, HR cases, all following their own paths within your enterprise. They move back and forth. Most work is done by emails and phone calls and text messages. You know, there's manual processes and spreadsheets that are stored on some local hard drive that is actually making it hard to increase the speed and provide greater transparency. And so what we're looking at is steps to really master IT workflows for the patients and clinicians. We want to be able to scale IT services on a single ITSM cloud platform for healthcare. We want to make sure that the people that are delivering that care and have to deal with, from an agent perspective, how to resolve issues faster and really leverage the knowledge of the platform to help increase speed to resolution. How can we create unique consumer experiences that fit the world that the employees work in? Everything is about consumer experience. And really the question is, how are we defining consumers, right? And it's anyone that has, you know, a use to actually do something or get information, and what is the experience that surrounds them? So what you end up seeing is, you know, a myriad of processes that are fragmented. What we typically describe a service, and in terms of, you know, how we actually get a service, is asking for information about something or helping something that might be broken. And right now it's fragmented. You know, it's almost like a rat's nest of products held together by baling wire, you know, and in many instances, right, IT is looked to as, you know, an organization that can fix anything, right? Whenever I go into my clinician's office and they see that I have a health IT background, especially, you know, with Kaiser, they were always asking, well, you know, this isn't working, or this, what do I do about this? And all of a sudden it becomes a laundry list and it goes into this black hole. Well, IT is going to fix that. But, you know, even within IT, there's processes and plans that need to be kind of tethered together, because there's some legacy solutions and point solutions that are causing it to be disjointed and fragmented. Point products really add to the complexity, resulting in high costs to manage and integrate poor user experience. And it's just an environment that ultimately drives up IT costs and lowers users' productivity by consuming valuable IT resources. There was a study that was done that basically said that, you know, there's about a 3 to 5% negative impact on earnings before tax that we did with Forrester, just to try to understand the impact of it. So what ServiceNow is bringing to the table is a solution our customers need that frees their employees from the non-automated process and really turns into applying their creative to their customers and build better products and services aligned to their business strategy. ServiceNow's single cloud platform for IT is a solution that gives IT and customers alike an unfair advantage. And according to, you know, our recent Forrester report, it shows that these large and small customers alike found an average of $18.4 million in savings after moving to our own single cloud platform to manage IT across their value chain. So what does this mean for actual healthcare? We're looking at, you know, wanting to make life better for patients and providers. We're looking at having ServiceNow connect teams and workflows and systems so that we can streamline operations and break down silos. What I'll describe to you is some of the ways that we're using ITSM to help for a better clinician experience. But what we look at is really focused in on driving 4 outcomes in healthcare. One is making sure our patients have a smoother intake and greater engagement process. Making sure that clinicians and staff work faster with onboarding, seamless transitions, and have the information that they need for better outcomes and communications. Making sure that the processes are simple and streamlined and cost-effective. And then making sure that there's security that's wrapping across all of these things, as we know that it's become a very vulnerable place for hackers to attack healthcare organizations. So some of the solutions that we have are focused in on, this is really what we call our Emr Help Button. It's basically integrated into, you know, Epic and Cerner, and gives a way for clinicians to be able to reduce the time that they're spending on documenting tickets that are happening within their EMRs. It allows for staff to stay within the EMR and have a portal that pops up that allows them to communicate their experience, and then routes the issues to the correct clinical informatics teams. And then some of the outcomes that we've seen here, we've seen that, you know, average 7 minutes of reduction to log issues. We've also seen 25% reduction in help desk costs and actual average work hours, as well as increased clinician satisfaction, because it's one less system that they have to go into to document what's happening. Another case study is Vitus Healthcare. So with Vitus, what ended up happening here is it's a, you know, home health agency, and they have about 12,000 employees. And they really wanted to streamline their IT processes to try to understand there was many devices that were getting outside of their current care and into the homes of these patients that were being monitored and cared for. And they wanted a way to track those, and as well as, you know, as people offboarded, onboarded, be able to remove the cost and get the devices back. And they saw that they were losing a lot of money that way. And so one of the mechanisms that they used was to leverage the ITSM platform to help manage their devices, as well as, you know, track their inventory of devices. And so what they ended up seeing was, you know, about a $70,000 in carrier savings a month, just because they were able to retrack those devices, as well as utilization from a inventory standpoint, and being able to understand what assets were under their umbrella? That was a hard question for the CIO to answer, and through our platform, they were able to come to more solutions. Michigan Medicine. So this use case is really near and dear to me just because we all were impacted by COVID, right? Imagine March of last year when, you know, people were asked to stop coming into the office and all of the chaos the healthcare organizations went through to make sure that, you know, they had all the information needed for employees to understand what was happening, what was the organization's policy. Michigan Medicine over the weekend stood up an information portal for their employees to understand what the protocols were that Michigan Medicine was following. They were also able to then use the service management to really help understand what devices need to be given out so that people don't stop work and actually just continue. This actually resulted in increased support of needs for them. We were able to innovate over the weekend and be able to really help decrease some of the miscommunication and, you know, lack of information that might have been shared if there wasn't a way and a platform to allow them to do so. Another use case is Thomas Jefferson. We were able to, with Thomas Jefferson, really understand, you know, what is the exposure tracing and contact tracing for when employees are back on site. How are they able to actually see that they've been exposed to COVID-19, make sure the right team members are able to do the work and are notified? And so Thomas Jefferson actually used Servicenow to deploy emergency solutions, which basically allows you to monitor, track, and communicate employees that might have been exposed, as well as figure out what their condition status is, and then be able to cross-coordinate across functions about, you know, perhaps they were in contact with other employees as well. And so what they saw from this was the level of frustration and the risk tolerance from the staff went down, as well as increased the employee loyalty. So what this really gets at is, you know, we are really about improving clinician workflows from major incidents and the management of it. Better patient experiences, being able to have information request and manage throughout the process, and really allow for a single platform so that service delivery is there with an agent workspace and you have all the information that's necessary to manage expectations. And we can actually walk through a couple of use cases as to some before and after scenarios. But what this really goes through is like across the IT value delivery chain, whether you're doing agile or waterfall or scrum or fall, the mixture of the two, legacy solutions and point solutions are going to be fragmented. There's a limited ability for IT to deliver modern services due to the management of on-premise systems. There's not always the best integration just between the different data sources, and there's too much time that's being spent on firefighting instead of delivering services. The results of this are ultimately driving up IT costs, lowering the productivity by consuming valuable IT resources that are just there to help keep the lights on. So what Servicenow really offers is the ability for organizations to jumpstart their digital transformation by moving IT service management to the cloud. And Servicenow's non-stop cloud, we remove the burden of managing on-premises hardware. The non-stop cloud and a service system of engagement to help organizations drive innovation. And I really think that that's very key. It's because it's not just a layer of, you know, the platform, it's the engagement that's around it. So it can work with your EMRs, it can work with your scheduling, your other administrative tools, and all of the applications you need for delivering modern IT services to scale on a single ITSM platform. It will help increase IT agent productivity and create resilience and service experiences that fit the world that employees work in. And thereby, you'll be able to delight your employees, your IT services with mobile service portal, virtual agents, and walk-up experiences as well. So here we're going to look at some before and after in terms of, you know, prompt identification and remediation of major incidents is sometimes just a combination of luck and the hope that it's not discovered by others. And so here, sometimes in most organizations, email incidents are communicated via email. There's not enough information about it. There's no priority or escalation. It's being manually triaged by, IT teams to try to understand, okay, this might have come in 2 or 3 times from different people, and is there a larger issue that we need to look into? There's no visibility to actually look into that issue, and therefore it just creates an overwhelming use of communication, and then typically it results in some sort of downtime because you have to resolve this issue. And then you go back to communicating in this kind of overall frame of reference to try to clearly resolve the issues. With Servicenow, you have the ability to actually report and identify an issue that either via desktop, via mobile device, but it's very convenient, and it's behind the scenes, it's automatically routed to the right team, which can look at a dashboard that looks at, are other issues that have been reported related to this. And because it's a central platform and with one data model, one architecture, you're able to see if there's other issues that might have been able to be traced back to this current issue. There's ability to have some sort of prioritization and escalation associated with it. And then you're able to look at, because it is a one platform, you're able to look at anything else that might have some dependencies on this issue that needs to get then triggered and communicated with as well. And then you're able to then close the loop. I think closing the loop sometimes serves as a challenge because the requester never actually gets the notification that, hey, it's been resolved. And you're able to then keep the requester engaged and informed of all the steps that are happening. I think a lot of organizations right now do this. We have to do this, but it's marred in, spreadsheets and different teams that have been set up that feel as though that they are the escalation team, and it becomes very nuanced when things hit, like a pandemic, and then the system is tested, and then you're able to see that this could have been done better in a retroactive way. So some of the things just to address are, it's convenient. I know that having 60% of all of our contact was through mobile devices at my organization. We're able to swiftly manage incidents from any device, right? Being able to use that, being able to collaborate with teams and view progress and come to better outcomes. Some of the other things are, request management before and after. So think about the use case of when employees are actually going in and needing something. What's the user experience? Well, before it's a multi-step manual process. There's various people that they have to communicate with and understand, hey, for certain, whether it's hardware or software, there could be different people that have to sign off and different approvals. And then somewhere the procurement happens and then the employee finally gets the device and might not necessarily know when it's coming. With Servicenow, there is a portal and I will speak from this from my own experience of joining from 6 months ago, it's convenient. It's convenient to have an employee portal which is linked to a service catalog, which is then able to be linked to the right approval flow behind the scenes where managers are set up already and there's not any guessing as to what happens next. And I'm able to see right in my workflow, hey, my boss has to approve this. Afterwards, it's going to go to procurement, then shipping, and where's the best address. All that information is put up front, and I'm just getting notifications to let me know when that request is being managed and handled. And so this really does provide a super end-to-end user experience, having an employee portal. It gives employees the time and the ability to have information at their fingertips. It guides them with the ability to have behind-the-scenes automated workflows. And it meets employees where they are through an omni-channel experience. The other aspect of this is really, reducing costs while resolving issues. This notion of having a virtual agent on your employee portal, it deflects a lot of the various calls that might be coming into your call centers. And through that portal, we've seen a very high success rate of adoption and the ability to actually make it so that it's intelligent. Sometimes you experience virtual agents or chatbots which are useless, right? They just kind of add another level of an engagement without actually resolving anything. And I think that that's the unique differentiation, is that because our platform is connected as an enterprise platform, that you are able to tap into different aspects of resolution that are needed to come to the forefront and actually resolve an issue. The other aspect of this is proactive service delivery. The faster the incident resolution and higher agent productivity. So we do have the ability to look at various aspects of what's happening when a call comes in. You can look at your employee information, and even in terms of your patients, you'll be able to see through integrations, you know, what insurance they might have, what's their last appointments, what allergies they have. So we're bringing together different systems to lessen the swivel chair aspect and to really be able to offer a service offering that allows for quicker resolution, less logging into multiple systems, and then really using contextual search and AI to assist putting relevant results in front of the agents. So what I just want to leave you with is that Servicenow is the one platform that can help consolidate the foundation, the experience, and help innovation. And because it's a single platform, your patients and your clinicians are as important as your administrative staff to make sure that they also have a good consumer experience. And in the way that the environment is changing, this platform is going to help enable those organizations that have the future vision of allowing more services to get back into the home to really allow for that to happen. So, you know, I really encourage you to look at and evaluate if you want to work better and be more efficient and have more systems connected. Servicenow is a platform that's going to be able to get you there. I thank you for your time, and I'd like to open it up for any questions that might come up.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation. We do have some questions for you. Now, while we take those questions, again, I'll bring up our poll. I want to call everyone's attention to the poll there on the screen. Out there in the audience, check out the poll that says, what additional information would you like about the Servicenow solution? And we appreciate your feedback. Let's see, Vishaka, great presentation. First question I see here comes from Eric, who's asking, it's a two-part question. How does this compare to other service-oriented solutions out there in the industry? What really makes Servicenow unique, I guess, is the question. And then what's the licensing model typically for Servicenow?
Sure. So for the first question, really the uniqueness of our platform is that it actually, you can absolutely, if you leverage all of the ITSM, products and services, you through a single pane of glass can understand what your organization's workflows are across the continuum. I think that in a lot of the other solutions, it stops like with IT service management, or it might start and stop with SecOps and security. Hardly do you have a company that comes in and can look at it across the whole enterprise platform stack, from your business operations to the way that you handle your investment processes, your portfolio management, looking at your risk profile, your vulnerabilities, your ability to service requests. All of that is something that is native and key to our platform. And I think our sheer platform capabilities, so these virtual assistants, they're easy to build. I mean, you don't have to be a developer. The benefit is that as Fred Luddy was actually envisioning this, he didn't want developers to be the only ones that could develop on this platform. It is purely a low-code, no-code platform, so you do have consultants that are able to go in and drag, drop, and actually create virtual agents in minutes that actually resolve for something. So I think the usability, the ability for it to be across platform and enterprise-wide is really the key differentiator. And in terms of our licensing model, it really depends on the organization. We have tiered licensing structures. Typically, it's either per user or per subscriber or fulfiller. And so I think the best way to answer that is to really get a hold of the solutions consultant or the account executive to really help figure out the organization's needs. But we do have tiered pricing structures in place.
Excellent. And I think that it probably answers this question, but I would just want to make sure, so I'll ask it anyway. Benjamin's asking, can Servicenow be used outside of healthcare in other industries?
Absolutely. We have stood up our automotive, financial, manufacturing, industries, and across the board, we have a full industry team that's dedicated to it. So it is leveraged. I mean, we are looking at expanding. We have life sciences, we have payer, and so absolutely, we are industry agnostic. And if there's any more details that I can provide around that, I'd be happy to.
Excellent. And then I'd like this question. They say, I like how ServiceNow talks about the old model versus the new model in healthcare IT systems. And they're curious, how many IT organizations out there in healthcare have you seen that have really made the transition to this more, digital transformation type model?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think what we've seen is that there is this notion of where organizations fit into the maturity model. I'll tell you, we have, over 600 accounts in IT, healthcare organizations specifically. And there is like a stage model that we have, right? We kind of look at them as organizations that are early on in their digital transformation maturity. They're more manual, tactical, right? They're living in the calls, emails, and spreadsheets world. Then you have the ability to have more structured basic services like knowledge management or automated workflows. Then you have those organizations that are like self-reliant, right? They have some sort of single portal for all of their management of their resources and workflows. Then you have enterprise productivity where, right, they're actually making a dent in the way that they're really changing the full experience with their internal and external customers. And then you have the very innovative organizations that are really trying to not just service their own, but there are some organizations that we work with right now where they're looking at providing a shared service to non-contracted hospitals, to other clinics in their rural organizations because they're bigger and they're able to provide those services. So now they're looking at ServiceNow to figure out how can we leverage ServiceNow to now be a shared service for other organizations that are not a part of that umbrella. So you have a very wide range of customers that we service, but I'd say that typically we're working with people that are kind of in between the 2 and 3, the structured basic services and kind of more self-reliant.
Okay, interesting how there's so many different types of, healthcare IT organizations working at all different spectrums of the digital transformation level there. So good stuff. Let's see, next question. I like this one. What sort of native development would be required to get value out of ServiceNow? Really, it truly is a low-code, no-code platform. I think that, we want to stay away from native custom-coded development, right? I think the best way to leverage the platform is to use it as is, making sure that you have the different integrations and APIs that are there. Our virtual agents, like I said, take minutes to develop. And the whole purpose of the platform was really to allow business users and technical users to benefit from developing workflows. We have a workflow builder, which is literally like a drag and drop and be able to assign certain tasks and capabilities. So, there's not necessarily development that's required. Our solution consultants, when they work with your organizations and they show, solutions that are very specific to your organization, there's no coding that's required. And that's the beauty of the platform, is that it was meant for simplicity, right? Being able to solve a problem doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simple. And so I would say that there's not a lot of native development per se. There's more configurations and the way to apply business rules to solve your needs. Excellent. All right. Well, Vishaka, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here in our live Q&A, but really great presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Great. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.
For more information on ServiceNow, of course, make sure you answer that poll question. We do appreciate it. Also, check out the handout that's available there in your audience console in the Handouts tab. It talks about how your hospital could deliver better care faster and more effectively at lower costs with the ServiceNow solution. So a great resource for today's topic. All right, thank you to everyone who responded there to the poll. It's now time to introduce you to our next presenter. I'm excited to introduce Mr. John Kimmerly, Epic Solution Alliance Manager at Pure Storage. John, take it away.
Morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is John Kimmerly. I'm a Global Alliance Executive with Pure Storage. I'm on the Health and Life Sciences team, and we are primarily, my role is really to help Pure Storage and its customers achieve the outcomes that they're looking for. Nobody buys storage just for the sake of having storage. They want to do something, and we work closely to make sure that our partners and customers are achieving the outcome that they're looking for. So today we're going to talk about a renewed focus on information technology solutions in healthcare that improve operations, reduce waste, and really ultimately help us better focus on what we're really intending to do, which is to take better care of people. So I think I have a unique perspective, a little bit about my background. I spent almost 30 years within the healthcare provider space with a large healthcare organization. Over the tenure, there was really 3 roles. One was a Vice President of Clinical Transformation, where I led the strategic projects within the system. That was when the EHR implementations were going on, and a few other large strategic projects. Sat in a CIO seat for a while, and also in a Vice President of IT Strategy and Planning, which was an interesting role in that I stepped back from a particular clinical and revenue cycle applications and thought about how all the investment in the IT organization aligned with the overall objectives of the organization, how it produced value. So very interesting perspective. So before we get into kind of the recommendations and thoughts going forward, I think it's important to realize where we are in the healthcare industry, and where we are has really been a product of decades of all sorts of things, from the culture of service-oriented IT organizations, the investments, incentives with high tech, some of the economic agency theory of healthcare in general. So there's a long list of reasons why we are where we are, but I found probably the most data-oriented, kind of scientific look at where healthcare is, and I'd like to share it with you. Before I do, though, I'd like to ask you a question, and it's an exercise. It'll set us up for this, but if you were to draw a graph, and on the vertical axis you put profitability of your organization, and on the horizontal axis put the degree to which the organization spends on IT spending, and you can, as a percentage of overall revenue or expenses in general. So profitability and level of IT spend, or as a percentage of revenue and expenses. And think about, in your organization, what would that curve look like? If you didn't spend anything on IT, how profitable would your organization be? And if you spent way too much, twice what you should on IT, what would that curve be? And so I'm going to share with you, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Rubin Worldwide, Dr. Howard Rubin is the founder. Probably when it comes to the economics of data and information technology, he seems to be the global authority. He's had data sets that go back decades, and is able to look at the relationship between IT spend and organizational effectiveness. And when I did this exercise, and this curve does vary by industries, but if you look at, we'll say, the banking and finance industry, and I picked this one because it tends to be a little more digitally mature. The costs are a little more transparent, and so it's probably a little more of where healthcare should go when it comes to thinking about data management, and the economics. So if you look at their curve, and I'll flip down, it resembled probably what you thought, that if you didn't spend that the sweet spot, where you wanted to be was somewhere in the middle, that it was a concave curve that if you spent too little, you weren't as profitable, and if you spent too much, you weren't as profitable. So now let's look at the healthcare industry. Interesting, this curve, if you look at the white line, which is all performers, again, profitability here in IT intensity, it's Dr. Rubin's way to articulate the relationship between IT spend and as a percentage of revenue and expense. So all performers, fairly simply, the more you spent on IT, the less profitable you were. Now, the top performers, there was a little more of this sweet spot, but in general, the overall trend was very quickly, the more you spent, the less profitable you were. I think this is very interesting, and I think it's very supportive of some of my experiences over the past 3 decades. So I share this with you because I think within healthcare IT, we're at a critical juncture, both with the maturing of technologies, but also the pandemic, consumer expectations. This is really a critical juncture. And what I wanted to, the primary thing I'd like to impart is really to think about your thinking about the way you invest in IT. You know, not just some of the latest trends of technology that people are talking about, but really step back and take inventory of your mindset. Because from that previous curve, and in my experience, you know, for several decades, we have spent too much money on IT and not gotten enough value. And going forward, we would like to increase the value that we get from these investments, and it will be critical. A lot of organizations after the pandemic have budget constraints, capital's tight, the operating income over the past year has been constrained. So, next year's capital is this year's net income. So there's a kind of a critical juncture, a building storm that I think is important. When I talk with CIOs, so the bottom line is clearly in healthcare, there's been a tremendous investment and we haven't seen the value. There's a lot of waste in there. So when I talk with CIOs, and it kind of varies between healthcare CIOs, and it varies between small organizations or medium and large, and often I'm talking about the medium and the large organizations. There's a couple themes that come out of those conversations right away. One is they are really tired of a legacy IT infrastructure experience in general. And what is that legacy infrastructure experience? Well, it's one where you, when you buy technology, you are, licensing an application, you are buying hardware, it's all CapEx, you're hiring people, it's complex, there's disruptive upgrades, there's unplanned downtime, you have to hire people to make sure that they have the skill set to create reliable systems across the entire stack. And then every 3 to 5 years, especially on the infrastructure side, either the data growth or escalating maintenance, you have to rip out what you bought 3 to 5 years ago and put in new infrastructure. And that obsolescence business model just goes over and over again. Sometimes it's unpredictable with escalating maintenance. And in today's environment, especially with all the other software as a service, with the expectations of the cloud, and when I say cloud, I just mean across public, private, just cloud-like in nature. There's a lot of expectations for a different experience. And so when they say they want to get out of the data center business, often they'll follow that up with, we want to move to the cloud. And a very, I think, again, a mindset type question is, is the cloud a destination or is it an operating model? And when I think about all of IT, really, it's a tool. And tools have different purposes. They're designed for different they're designed for different purposes, and that tool is only as good as the craftsman in which the tool is placed. So, tools, technology, process, culture, timing are really, all together, the interventions that produce an effect. What I find, healthcare tends to be a little further behind some of the other industries, and I think Dr. Rubin's example with banking and finance and healthcare is indicative of that. And as we look at other industries, we see, I'll call it a little more digital maturity, where as they look at technologies, they are really looking at them from a business model or perspective. So as opposed to looking for a single technology to solve their problems, they are more mature at understanding how a particular technology will solve, what its weaknesses are. Right now within healthcare, there's a lot of buzz about the cloud, and as I talk with organizations, many of them don't have relevant experience with moving different solutions into the public cloud. If they do, then they are fully aware of some of the strengths and weaknesses of that particular technology. So as we look at more digitally mature organizations, we see an articulation of a hybrid cloud and multi-cloud strategy, kind of a cloud everywhere. And so strategies that fundamentally, or a mindset really that says, hey, let's put the workload where it makes the most sense from a cost and performance perspective, is really an intelligent IT strategy. So turning over to my thoughts on how Pure Storage fits into that. If you're not familiar with Pure Storage, and you're in healthcare, you really need to take a look. You can check on Gartner's website and see that we are a clear leader. Have really brought a transformative business model to the market, one that the technology itself, because it's been all flash from the beginning in all of our solutions, has really allowed us to take advantage of the benefits of that platform and offer a business model that is really transformative. And it's coming as organizations want a cloud-like experience. This business model really lends itself well to those organizational requirements. So not only Pure Storage has some of the fastest, most reliable, best customer service, top 1% NPS score. Very clearly, Gartner is has a strong opinion of Pure Storage in the market. But the business model itself is the transformative piece, and that is, we call it evergreen. And really, unlike the legacy infrastructure experience where you bought something and it depreciated, and after 3 to 5 years you needed to replace it, rip it out, take a downtime, move the data, kind of rebuy what you've already bought. When you want it as a service, you don't want to have to rebuy that, and that's what Pure Storage's evergreen model allows you to do. Never have to rebuy your storage. It can be upgraded with non-disruptively, and really you could keep the same storage, expand it, and replace controllers over the lifetime. So it actually gets better over time, faster and more dense in the capacity. So that's allows us to really offer up Pure as a service to the industry very easily. We've been doing it for a few years, and it's starting to take off. Again, I referenced some of these conversations with healthcare CIOs that are very interested in, as a service. And because this is an asset that we keep on our books if it's as a service, and it doesn't depreciate or get worse over time, it actually gets better over time, it's very easy to offer it as a service. The idea of never having to rebuy your storage again. So also there are some, I mentioned that more digitally mature organizations are moving toward a hybrid cloud environment and strategy. They've, they understand the relative strengths and weaknesses of the different technologies. It's not just a on-prem or in the cloud, but there's, co-located direct connect, and they understand, what parts of this, the entire IT portfolio have strengths and weaknesses. So a great overall strategy is around, how do you build a hybrid cloud enablement so you can be as flexible as you can. We have taken the operating system, the software that sits on all of our storage products, and natively integrated that with AWS and Azure. So you can look at all your storage through a single pane of glass. It's called Cloud Block Store. And it kind of makes the public cloud better. And it allows you to do what I said, more mature organizations tend to do is, put the workload where it makes the most sense and be able to do that, dynamically. So create a platform where you can see all your storage, whether it's on-prem in the cloud or co-located somewhere else through a single pane of glass, and then, move those workloads where they make the most sense. And because our data services have been extended in that software to the cloud, we can do things like, our encryption, but dedupe, and we find, especially within the healthcare data sets, we can get, approaching 7 to 1. So 100 terabytes of data is now much smaller, which will save on some of the fees. And then multi-cloud. As we get more experience with the different services that are offered, we may want to move certain data into one cloud or another for the microservices that are there. So enablement of a multi-cloud strategy is real important too, and Cloud Block Store does that. So the other objective that was on this webinar was really to think about resiliency and the benefits. Healthcare really demands data protection. Our clinicians are increasingly intolerant of downtimes, and a modern experience, a modern data experience, not one tied to legacy systems, really does allow for very high degrees of reliability, 6+ nines of reliability, simple to use, and the ability to upgrade non-disruptively, never take a downtime. And there's some technology with Pure Storage that allows that to happen. Another big topic around resiliency is really around ransomware, and built into our storage arrays is it's both a technology and a process, but it's called safe mode, and where the snapshots can be protected, they can't be changed, and for them to be eradicated, it takes we set up a process with our support where it really takes, think of like the 2 keys, but it takes 2 people or more from an organization to have the proper keys to allow the support at Pure Storage to actually go and eradicate. So it's kind of like a fail-safe from a ransomware perspective. If they get in, they've been in, and they've encrypted, there's a place where they can't touch, they can't eradicate it, and it can be a very effective way to provide another layer of response for ransomware. Lastly, when it comes to resilience, some of the trends that we're seeing, a lot of the organizations that I work with, and it's probably not as glamorous as some of the other topics, but data protection, the legacy data protection mindset was really around an insurance policy, almost like term life insurance, where you had it, but you never intended to use it. And so we're starting to see less than best practice, backup times, restore times, recovery points are not what I would call best practice. And so we're looking for a more modern data protection that has, backup times that are, in the single hours, and restore times that are equally as fast. And there's some partnerships that we have with existing data protections partners, along with a flash recover powered by Cohesity, that within the healthcare space, we're seeing some tremendous improvements on backup and restore times. So with that, I think I'm running close on time. I want to leave some time for some questions. So let me just pause right there and take a look for the questions that have come in so far. The first question is around, in your opinion, what is the most important IT strategy? This is hard for me to answer because I think I have probably three. One is, I think, when healthcare CIOs talk about, wanting to get out of the data center business, wanting, I think the core IT strategy is really around agility. There's a lot of uncertainty in the business world, in healthcare. We don't know where things are going. We don't know exactly where things are going to be. So you don't want to put down a big bet on a big asset and then miss it. So you want to be agile. You want to get in and out of things. You want to create some flexibility. And I think, as I mentioned, Pure as a service, a true service, not just a lease, but a service, really is a nice agility enabler. The other one is around simplification. We talked about this technical debt that we've accumulated over the past decades, and it needs to be dealt with. So as we move forward, we do have to address the future investments, but we've got a tail of legacy environment, infrastructure applications, people, data that needs to be dealt with. So simplifying that environment, great simplification IT strategy to deal with the legacy environment is critical as well. So agility and simplification, probably the two. I couldn't pick one. Just gonna be mindful of time here. What are your views on digital transformation in healthcare after the pandemic? Well, as I mentioned, as we look at all the industries, healthcare from a digital transformation perspective tends to lag some of the other industries. And so there's a couple thoughts. I think fundamentally, it's probably not that insightful right now, but I think the transformation of healthcare from a digital perspective will accelerate. And there's a couple drivers there. One, I think the consumer experiences, because we all went through this shared pandemic where we relied on some of the day-to-day services and products more in a digital format. We're going to expect that in our healthcare providers. We're going to be more pushing them. So that's one. Consumer expectations, I think, will accelerate. The other is organizations have this muscle memory that they gathered as they went from very few virtual visits in the ambulatory setting to scaling that up quite large within almost a matter of a few weeks last March and April. That organizational agility to do something so fundamentally different, the technology has been there for years, and yes, there's been reimbursement and legal and other reasons why it hasn't taken off, but to turn that so quickly. And I talked with several chief medical information officers, and they are so refreshed that their organization was able to do something so quickly. And I think the organization won't forget that. They'll be looking at, what is that next major, digitally transformed process. And when we talk about digitally transformation, we really think we're really talking about fundamentally re-engineering, reimagining the underlying process, not just adding more IT or a digital front door, fundamentally transforming it. We're on the cusp, and I'm excited about that. Let me pause there and see if there's any other questions. I think we're getting close to time, and I want to be mindful that we don't go over. There's one more topic on digital transformation that I wanted to touch on. I think really that we're going to see an acceleration, but we're going to be, we're going to have to deal with the legacy investment, but being pushed to make investments. So we're going to be looking for more agility. So as you look at the different IT solutions, know that it's not an either or on-prem or in the cloud or CapEx, OpEx. There's so much flexibility, and as you understand the relative strengths and weaknesses of the solutions, change the mindset and think about where the organization needs to go, and then we can tailor solutions that fit your organization's unique needs. And with that, I'm going to have to pause because we're at time, but thanks for your time, and hopefully you find this insightful, and please reach out on LinkedIn. Love to network with my fellow colleagues.
All right, excellent presentation. Really love that. So much knowledge in just a short amount of time. Thank you so much, John. Really, again, appreciate that. We do have a poll question up on the screen for everyone out there. I want to call your attention to this poll. This simply says, what additional information would you like about the Pure Storage solution? And I'll leave this up here for a couple minutes, allow everyone to respond to that. I'm rerouting all the electronic questions here to John for him to answer as well. So we do appreciate those questions. Keep those coming. And I'll leave up the poll for you to reply to while I announce our next Amazon $500 gift card. This is going out to Dylan Weeks from Arizona. Congratulations, Dylan Weeks from Arizona. I'll post the first two prize winners here in the questions tab for you. Don't forget, we've still got another Amazon $500 gift card to give out. And we also, of course, have our best question prizes that we'll be awarding, one for each of the sessions on the event today, Amazon $50 gift cards. So keep those good questions coming. All right, thank you for all those poll responses. We do appreciate your feedback. And with that, I'm excited now to introduce you to our next presenter on today's Healthcare EcoCast. Welcome, Mr. Derek Snyder, Senior Sales Engineer at Sophos. Derek, are you there?
I am here. Thank you.
Great to have you, Derek. Take it away.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you all for having me. We're going to jump right in because we've got a ton to cover here in a pretty quick time. Again, my name is Derek Snyder. If you're not familiar with Sophos, I hope you are. You're going to learn a little bit today if you're not. But if you're not familiar with Sophos, we are a 30-year-old security company. 30 plus, actually. We've been at this for a long time. So hopefully you're familiar a little bit with Sophos. But let's jump right in today. So when people think about patient care, what do you generally think about, right? Your thoughts generally jump right to things like doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, right? Those who are actually delivering the medical services, if you will. Where we kind of forget, or sometimes we forget, cybersecurity also plays a really direct and significant role in enabling patient care. And I think this quote here really says it clearly. Ineffective cybersecurity is a clear and present danger to patient safety. Cyber incidents can significantly disrupt health and care systems and directly contribute to patient harm. Very interesting last little piece to that, directly contribute to patient harm, right? I should add, based off this quote too, that I think is applicable, is that I am based out of Southern California, and you probably likely know there's a well-known hospital right now in San Diego area that's been experiencing a malware incident, likely ransomware from what I've been reading. As of yesterday or day before, they still had systems down, like their EHR system, their patient portal. At one point, I know they were doing emergency care diversion for certain patients, having to send them to different hospitals. Personally, I actually know some people that work there. They were doing things by hand on paper. It was difficult for patients to even transfer to other facilities because the medical records stuff was all offline, so they couldn't easily transfer those records. So needless to say, this is real and hits home, very close to home in the last couple of weeks here as well in Southern California, which no doubt you've been, I'm sure, reading and hearing about. It's one of the very large hospital systems. But let's jump right in here. So recently, Sophos commissioned a survey, a global survey of healthcare IT professionals around the globe. I'm just going to hit on a couple of these numbers here. 63% of those that we surveyed said their cyber attacks increased over the course of 2020. 60% said that those cyber attacks were too advanced for their own IT teams internally there to deal with on their own, right? So with that in mind, it's probably no surprise that 70% of their workload said their workload increased over 2020, and 63% said their response time to cases increased over 2020. So we kind of have the perfect storm here with 2020 and everything that was going on, and that's kind of continuing. So as we jump in today, we're going to look at some specific things that came out of that survey, give you a little bit of threat landscape, if you will, of healthcare and cybersecurity, and show you some of the Sophos solutions as we go through this. But what came out of this really was, despite the geographical differences of the survey, there was a lot of commonality here. And we're going to look at the 6 major challenges for IT healthcare that was really common across the survey. The first one is safeguarding sensitive patient data, right? So securing those personal details. Obviously, you know that it can have a huge toll if that's exposed for individually or for organizations. Gaining confidence on ransomware. So we know healthcare is a major target for ransomware, particularly due to the significant kind of PII, Hipaa data that's held, and the criticality of the systems. The bad guys know, right? This is a great target, a great sector to target. Also supporting an increasingly mobile workforce. So as we talked about 2020, we know that people need to work securely from anywhere at times. Overcoming the cyber skills gap. So you've probably been hearing about this in the IT field, in cybersecurity specifically, about kind of a skills gap that has been around. Teams are understaffed, they're overworked, and they don't have the specific or necessary cybersecurity expertise, right? It takes a lot of expertise to combat the expertise of the cyber criminals. And then preventing user error, so protecting organizations from individual mistakes, right? That's one area that we can't lose sight of, is the human side, right? The actual users, right? They're also overworked, also working remotely in some cases. They tend to get a little click happy and rush and can expose themselves when they're working remotely as well. And then finally, the last challenge we're going to hit on is handling unrealistic workloads. Again, how do we save you time and reduce the admin burden, right? As we talked about, we know your teams are stretched. How do we help out, relieve some of that stress and that burden on you? So with that, we're going to jump in. A quick overview of Sophos. We do offer a range of solutions that help address some of these challenges that your stretched teams are coming across. And you can see here software, hardware, services, everything to managed services. All of these Sophos products on here are designed to be easy to use. They reduce complexity and risk, and they're all managed from one common platform called Sophos Central. And then at the bottom there, you see artificial intelligence, Sophos Labs, and our Security Operations Center. So those are all the pieces that really back and provide all the intelligence into all of our products. So we have a world-class AI team, our labs, and our Sophos SOC. So these are all great products on their own, and you can certainly use them on their own. But when you put them together, when you start to build this out together with multiple products, you're really putting together a synchronized, adaptive cybersecurity ecosystem. Sometimes we like to call it ACE. But they begin to work together, all from this single console. And we'll talk a little bit about that as I go, but these products do communicate and take automated action, so really helping save you time as well. So securing sensitive data wherever it's held, right, with so much different types of sensitive data, particularly within a healthcare organization, we know there's many places that it's stored and used, and protecting it can be kind of difficult. So when it comes to securing your data and preventing loss, there's kind of 4 main elements that we want to consider. The first is securing the device that holds the data. So our Sophos InterceptX endpoint protection helps with that, as well as our Sophos device encryption, so managing things like BitLocker and file vaults. The second place is securing the network, right? That's how we want to help secure the data, is by securing the network that data is flowing through. And that's easily done with our Sophos XG firewall, or Sophos firewall, that can help with that. And then the third kind of piece to securing your data and preventing loss is stopping loss by email, right? Whether it's deliberate or accidental, and we're going to get into how we accomplish that with some of these solutions. And then finally, controlling access to data. So having secure access to data wherever your users are, that could be through things like VPN or Sophos ZTNA, Zero Trust Networking. All of these elements kind of add up to help secure that data wherever you happen to be. So let's look at securing the device and workload with that Sophos Intercept X. This is the endpoint protection, some of those layers, right? And there's many more layers even, but I'm going to cover some of the big ones here. So first, Intercept X is really built on two dedicated anti-ransomware technologies, if you will. So we call it WipeGuard and CryptoGuard. CryptoGuard is really the main one there that we hear a lot about, but this CryptoGuard, what it does is stop unauthorized encryption. So we take a just-in-time file cache or copy of that file just in time, make that secure backup in our own secure safe store. I'm not using volume shadow copy. We know malware will blow those out. We identify the malicious file encryption behavior. We isolate that process, clean it up, and then automatically restore those files. This all happens in milliseconds, so it's very quick, been very successful for us against known and unknown ransomware, right? So we don't have to have seen the ransomware before necessarily. So you think back to, the WannaCries and Petra years ago, we were very successful and ultimately as a last line of defense, protecting data, protecting the customer's data. Deep learning AI, looking at unknown executables. So at Sophos, we have a world leading, as I mentioned, AI team who are just constantly developing new models to stop unknown executables. So they can stop known and never before seen malware with very low false positive rate very quickly. And then anti-exploit, this is huge. So exploits and fileless attacks, right? So there's millions of pieces of malware, but there's only a few dozen techniques that the attackers use in their threats. We're using this layer of protection here. Intercept X will stop the exploit technique that's being used, help break that threat chain, and ultimately stop the attack. Any vendor is going to say they have exploit protection. You want to ask them, which specific exploit techniques are you blocking? We have a great white paper on from Sophos on exploit techniques, things like heap sprays, stack pivots. There's a ton in there, but we're protecting against all of those techniques. And then finally, our foundational protections, right? Known threats. So signature-based technology, yes, it's been around for a long time, but signature-based technology still works when it matches, right? It's still a very powerful tool to include in your tool belt, or in this case, kind of in your armory, if you will. And then healthcare DLP rules. So protecting that data, we make it very easy to create healthcare-related DLP policies. We have things like country-specific identifiers, so you could filter out where that rule's for. So if you're primarily doing business in the United States for this particular rule, you can filter out for specific country range identifiers, or if it's another country, you can do that as well. And then we mentioned the Sophos firewall, helping protect the network that data flows on. So it integrates a lot of different security technologies within our next-gen firewall here, and you can see some of those on that box on the left there. But integrating things like our AI threat detection, our DPI or deep packet inspection with IPS, ATP, URL filtering, all the routing, country level blocking, all that good stuff. And recently we just released our brand new XGS series appliances. So these are just unparalleled new levels of protection and performance that can help you with the distributed networks you might come across today, as well as help you with the encrypted traffic, right? We know that, huge percentage of traffic nowadays is encrypted. So we were one of the first out of the gate with TLS 1.3 inspection, and having a box that can actually handle that. The last thing you want with a next-gen firewall is put that in place and then find out it actually can't handle decrypting the traffic. Our performance is off the charts, I can tell you that. And then protecting that data via email leaks, so protecting the email and the data from getting out through email. So we provide advanced data breach prevention with granular policies for encryption through your email. So we have a messaging portal, we have a push-based encryption. We can automatically scan the message bodies, the attachments for any of this sensitive data, right? Medical records, medical images, and automatically encrypt that data so you don't even have an accidental data breach as well. And ransomware. So we know, right, we know that ransomware is really, at an all-time high. You were seeing tons of it, again, in the news. It's not going away anywhere. We know the impact of ransomware can be devastating, right? It's not just about paying the ransom. It's the cost of losing patient data, right? Or delaying or canceling medical procedures, as we talked about with that quote at the beginning, how it can cause actual patient harm. But even for a smaller private practice or a hospital, one attack can be enough to kind of shut your doors for good, right? So that's where something like our proactive threat hunting and prevention tools that are constantly evolving to stay ahead and defend your network come into play there. And if we look at this particular slide here, you see some of these stats that came back again. 34% of the healthcare organizations were hit by ransomware in the last year. Those are the ones we surveyed. 65% of those that were hit said that the criminals were actually successful in encrypting their data. Interesting piece to that number, that 65%, that's quite a bit higher than the national global average, which came in around 54%. So it seems like they're a little more successful in actually encrypting data, within the healthcare sector. And then 34%, you see there, 34% of those who had their data encrypted, they actually paid to get their data back, right? That's a large number, paying to get their data back, like half, right? And then the average bill for taking care of the ransomware attack, when you average in, like, you can see all the downtime and resources and all that it took, 1.2 million in the healthcare sector. So large numbers, right? We talked about all those layers of protection for Sophos Intercept X on the endpoint. This just shows a quick overview of kind of some of those layers and what they look like in an attack chain. In this particular example, with a Ryuk ransomware attack, you can see, particularly if you look all the way to the right, with ultimately deploying Ryuk at the end, if it makes it through all the other layers of protection, your layers and our layers, that CryptoGuard wipe guard that I mentioned, that's that last layer of protection. That's that last line of defense there, where it actually will protect the data ultimately. But you can see some interesting layers here with the deep learning, right? Looking at phishing emails. There's a lot here to look at, but just wanted to give you that quick overview, and we can always, schedule time to deep dive into more of these things later for you. So ransomware adversaries, we know they're increasingly combining things like automation with actual hands-on hacking, right? Which is a whole nother ball game. So for the best kind of defense against those kind of attacks, as the defenders, we need to also combine our technology with human expertise. So the sooner you or we can help identify and neutralize that adversary, the lower that impact's going to be on you guys, right? So on the left here, you see Intercept X with EDR. So endpoint detection and response. These capabilities are going to give you the tools that you need to carry out your own threat hunts from that same console that I mentioned earlier, that Sophos Central platform. But it gives you the tools to do these threat hunts on your own. Now you're probably, or maybe looking like Derek, we already talked about and established we don't have huge teams. We may not have the expertise or the capacity to do those sorts of threat hunts on our own. And that's where that Sophos Managed Threat Response service here on the right comes into play. So these are our team of expert threat hunters providing that 24/7, 365 threat hunting, detection, and response capabilities that we deliver as a fully managed service. So they utilize some of those same tools, Intercept X with EDR, for their own threat hunting. It's a very thorough tool for them to use as well. But they will proactively hunt for threats, validate those threats, create incidents, and work on those, ultimately neutralizing threats very quickly to lessen that impact on you, right? One of the big differentiators for us is that we don't just stop at notifying you, though, right? When your house is on fire, you don't need the fire department to come and tell you, hey, yep, your house is on fire, you should put it out. You want them to come and put that fire out, and that's what this service does. We actually take action, which is unique with this type of service here, is that we actually take that action to neutralize it very quickly. So 2 a.m. in the morning, we will be monitoring and take that action. But let's say the worst does happen and you do have an active incident. You might be experiencing one now or sometime in the future. If you do, you don't need to be a Sophos customer. You can give us a call. We have a rapid response or incident response service that we call rapid response. We will very quickly get on the line with you, go through the threat, get you onboarded, and get you out of that so-called danger zone, right, very quickly. So we will respond to that active threat with you. We know every second counts at that point, so we are racing against the clock to do that. So give us a call. Don't hesitate. We can get you onboarded. Again, minutes and seconds make a big difference here when we're talking about an active incident. Giving users access from anywhere. So we talked about working remotely, and we know that sometimes whether you're in a hospital or a clinic or out in the community or at home, right, you really need to be able to access all that data that you need securely and making sure it's not at risk. But obviously that can sometimes put patient data at risk. So let's look at some of the Sophos tools that can help you in that regard. One, right, we have a long history with our firewall at Sophos of enabling secure remote access for our customers. So the first thing we kind of have two options for you in regards to VPN. The first one is our free, completely free, easy to use VPN client. It runs on the devices. So that's Sophos Connect over on the left. It's easy to deploy and configure. Give your remote users access to the resources they need on whether it's the corporate network, maybe a public cloud, whatever, from their Windows and Mac OS devices, right? And again, it's free. So unlike most competing offers where they're charging you for various users or VPN connections or clients, it's free and free with our licensing. And we have, I think it's over 1 million active clients, 1.4 million actually. So it's been a very tried and trusted solution for us. And then I mentioned it's free, 1.4 million users. SD-Red, that's our software-defined remote Ethernet device. It's a simple plug-and-play device, great for smaller clinics and individuals to connect to that main network with an always-on, easy connection. They don't need the IT expertise out there to set that up. You can configure it, send it out. They just plug it in, and it will phone home and create that connection back to the firewall, ultimately protecting, right, all that communication. And this gives another overview here of how that SD-Red device could be used to help support like dispersed teams and clinics and such. And you can see where, again, you just drop in these SD-Red. They're small, little, inexpensive boxes, and again, they create that automatic tunnel back to the firewall. Back in this case, you can see a firewall protecting the database, and then you can see all these remote sites or clinics with that always-on secure connection. And then strengthening your IT teams with expertise, right? So another way that MTR team can help you, right? I already mentioned they're expert ransomware and threat hunters, but they can also become part of, think of it like an extension of your team to give you capacity and expertise to help you handle threats. So it's nice to know it's like another member of your team, but a lot less than you trying to actually hire a member of your team and have that, especially for that kind of expertise. And then you want to give users a security safety net, right? So even with the most advanced securities in place, there's one factor we know it's always difficult to control. And I mentioned this earlier, the human error, right? How do you control that, the human side of it? It's a very high pressure setting for you in healthcare. Again, they might be working remotely. They're very busy, right? There's patient care and things on the line. Very high pressure. First thing is securing the network. So securing the network with the firewall, stopping the attacks at the front door there. And then securing that device. So with the Intercept X, as we talked about, some of those layers. So this kind of also becomes an extension of your team as these products work with automation built in. And then securing email. So using that predictive AI-powered email protection. So we remove malicious emails before users can even click on them right from their inbox, making sure there's no chance they click on those things. And then ultimately training your users on how to spot threats. So as we know, the adversaries are getting, they're smarter, craftier. they're trying to exploit that human nature, and they know that. Particularly in the last 2020, they were doing that even more. We saw those threats increasing. But this Sophos Phish Threat solution, it helps identify malicious emails, helps users identify malicious emails, I should say, using our simulated phishing campaigns. And we have specific healthcare templates you can configure. And what happens is you send these simulated phishing campaigns, end user clicks or opens the attachment, they get redirected to training, and then they take a little quiz, and then you begin building up what we like to call sometimes that human firewall, helping them be an extension of your team and spot those things that are coming through email. So it's a great way to train your users, Sophos Phish Threat. So spending less time on cybersecurity admin, we know, again, that you have limited resources. It's hard to make a lot of changes here when you're drowning in a lot of, whether it's alerts or data, right? Too much data, and you're not sure how to what needs your attention, how to balance all those things. So we really try to help you cut through all that noise. We've talked about all these solutions today, right? And I'm not going to read through them all, but the things like Intercept X, that's our endpoint protection, the Sophos Firewall, the EDR, the MTR Managed Threat Response Service, those SD-RED devices, VPNs, ETNA, Phish Threat, device encryption. Again, these can all be managed from that single platform called Sophos Central, including wireless, XDR. All of this means you can control everything from this single dashboard, from your day-to-day management to if you actually want to do some of your own advanced threat hunting, you do all of that within this single console. And then there's one more final advantage that I want to hit on, and that's what we call synchronized security at Sophos. And this has really been a cornerstone of our protection for many years. And when we launched this somewhere around 2015 or so, synchronized security was unique in the marketplace, really. And we continue to offer that as the most extensive integration compared to other vendors where we're giving you kind of deep cross-product insights. So what this is doing is allowing our endpoint and our firewall to share intelligence and respond automatically to incidents. So if an endpoint health is not green and healthy from a Sophos perspective, there's some sort of malware or incident going on, it can't connect out through that firewall rule. It can't flow through that rule, right? And then check out this quote from Gardner here. Sophos continues to lead the market with its XDR capabilities between firewall and endpoint security products. So we've been known for this for quite a long time, third parties recognizing us as well. So it's that endpoint and firewall communicating, sharing intelligence. And then just about wrapping up here, slashing your workload in half, right? When you think about how these advantages all add up together, right? All the things we talked about, whether it's the advanced protection, the automation, managing things from a single platform, the synchronized security, sharing intelligence. When you add all those things up together, our customers regularly tell us, those IT admins tell us that it's reduced their workload up to at least 50%. I mean, that's a huge number, right? Pretty bold and huge number, but we stand behind it. And then, again, no surprise, probably 85% see a reduction in security incidents. Again, it's not just about your workload, but also about the best protection and reducing those security incidents that you then need to spend time investigating. So a reduction in your workload, a reduction in the incidents. And then to kind of sum up here, we kind of reached the end of our session, looking at how Sophos can help you with these common challenges in IT healthcare, protecting those environments through the sensitive data that they carry, right? That really takes the layered approach, right? Layered security approach. You can see kind of these challenges here that we covered today. So remember these: securing your data where it's held, being able to face ransomware head on, giving access to users from anywhere, strengthening your IT team, helping train up your busy workers to work more safely and securely, and then finally giving you back some of your time and reducing those incidents. And that is right at the end here. And I hope we might have some time for a couple questions.
We do, yeah. Excellent presentation, Derek. We've gotten a ton of questions already there in the questions pane. So thank you to everyone out there in the audience. I'm very thankful that the Sophos experts are here electronically helping with these questions, because there's a lot of them. Obviously, a lot of interest and excitement around Sophos. So I brought up the poll question here for everyone. I want to call your attention to what additional information would you like about the Sophos solution. So not sure where to start. There's so many of them. I guess I'll start here with this. Is the endpoint DLP an add-on to the Intercept X licensing?
Great question. No, it actually comes free with the Intercept X licensing. It's part of that same client and same licensing, same console, with very easy built-in templates. So no, it's free with the licensing.
Got it. Okay. And then how is the Sophos Firewall VPN client licensed?
Oh, yep, great question again. I covered that a little bit. So it's actually free. I know sometimes people are surprised because they're used to other vendors charging for that. Again, in various licensing methods, but ours is completely free with your Sophos Firewall-based license. It comes with the firewall.
Nice. I want to share this comment from Cameron, who said, been a Sophos customer for a few years, easy deployment, minimal configuration, great customer service, great products. It's always great to see your customers bragging about your product.
Yes. Thank you, Cameron. I promise I don't know Cameron, and I did not influence him at all, or her.
Excellent. Let's see. Next question. Where can I get more information on your ZTNA solution?
Yeah, I think, let's see. I think we have some people monitoring the actual Q&A there. Can probably send a link. But we do have a web page, Sophos ZTNA. If you probably just Google it, or we can share the link here in one of these follow-ups. But there's an early access program right now for ZTNA that you can join.
Okay.
There'll be some details on the website there.
Nice. And then another question, how can I learn more about your managed threat response service?
Oh, yeah, managed threat response. So this is honestly our hottest product right now, is that service. As we I hope we highlighted well through the presentation, but today's threats really need more than just automation and tools. You really need humans, right, doing some of that threat hunting and recognizing some of the behaviors and reconnaissance and different things that are going on networks and devices much earlier in the attack chain, so we can neutralize that threat quickly. That service, it'd be best to reach out to your local Sophos account team probably and set up some time to have a discussion. If we need to deep dive in that, we can bring on members of our SOC team to deep dive into some of that or share some videos and such. So that'd probably be the best. Reach out to a local Sophos account team if you're familiar with them.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here in our live Q&A session. But again, great presentation, Derek. Thanks so much for being on.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
And thank you to the audience for all the excellent questions. Sophos experts are responding to those electronically as quickly as they can. Make sure that you check out the handouts tab there, where you can download the Sophos Healthcare Cybersecurity Guide. Looks like an excellent resource. You want to check that one out. A lot of good information in there. And of course, don't forget to answer the poll question, because we are now moving on to our next presentation. And with that, it's my pleasure now to introduce Saxon McCarty, Director, Falcon Complete Americas. Saxon, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Saxon. It's great to have you on from CrowdStrike. Welcome to the EcoCast. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. And good afternoon, all. And I want to thank ActualTech Media for arranging this EcoCast and having CrowdStrike attend to discuss some of the threat trends that we're seeing in the healthcare industry and ways that we can actually beat these adversaries. So just by way of quick introduction, my name is Saxon McCarty, and I head the Falcon Complete Managed Security Service business here at CrowdStrike. And for those of you who may not be entirely familiar with what we do here at CrowdStrike, I know we've hit the news quite a bit recently, but we started the firm nearly a decade ago with really one core mission, and that's to stop breaches for organizations all around the world. And this includes really all types and sizes of organizations, including healthcare organizations. And I'm proud to say that today we're protecting some of the largest healthcare system providers in the world, such as Providence Health, Trinity Health, Cleveland Clinic, and many other small to large organizations in the healthcare space, including the big pharmaceuticals like Pfizer. So just to take you back to our roots, we actually started the company in incident response, where if an organization experiences a breach, such as a healthcare provider or a large pharmaceutical company, for example, they would call us in after the fact, which we brought, tens of years of experience around incident response from our original founders' company called Foundstone, which was sold to McAfee, and then also, a variety of other ventures. And so really what they did was they would call us in to investigate what happened, and we would leverage our Falcon technology, which we'll talk a little bit about here in a second, which was built in the cloud. And this gives us the instant visibility into what is happening and while it's happening, most importantly. And then to further that, that allows us to identify really who is responsible for the attack through attribution. And it really gives us a firm understanding on what techniques and tools these attackers are using in the wild to be successful at breaching these organizations. And really since then, we've built groups of specialized cybersecurity experts, such as our threat hunting team called Overwatch, our threat intelligence group that really works in many different ways across the dark web, and a variety of other strategies for us to be able to collect threat intelligence globally. And then we've also got our threat response team, which is our Falcon Complete offering, where we're doing incident response 24/7 for our customers, all working together with our Falcon technology in the cloud 24/7 to identify threats that are emerging all around the world. Just to give you some visibility into our scale, so our technology is deployed in over 160 different countries, giving us this really unparalleled visibility. And we track over 140 different adversary groups, ranging from nation-state groups such as Russia and China, which are typically looking to damage our institutions for a variety of reasons, which we'll talk about here in a second. But we also track a lot of e-criminal groups that are typically after profits. And sometimes the lines blur between these nation-states and e-criminal groups, depending on what their mission is, since they are able to collaborate with their malicious tradecraft on the dark web. So today, I'm going to highlight some key trends that we're seeing in the healthcare industry based on this global visibility and apparatus that we have across our technology and our services. So as you're all probably well aware, ransomware continues to steal the headlines, steal the thunder, and be one of the major threat trends that continues to plague healthcare organizations, but also many other verticals as well. These adversaries are very well aware of the legacy systems that healthcare organizations have, such as, outdated operating systems like Windows XP, or devices that, that may not be as modern as we'd like them to be for a variety of reasons around older applications, et cetera. And the adversaries are also aware that profits are not extreme in these organizations. Therefore, the budgets and sometimes the cybersecurity budget at the end of the day isn't as big as it could be for addressing some of the cybersecurity challenges that are out there. And it's also well known that many of the cybersecurity solutions on the market, and there's no shortage of those. I think we reached 2,300 cybersecurity vendors recently across the board, which, a lot of them are focused on features as opposed to platforms. But at the end of the day, these solutions are very complex to set up. And then once they're set up, it's very complex to operationalize and manage, since many of the solutions today are still not cloud-based and fully managed by the vendors, but rather more compartmentalized and have many different management points and councils and solutions and agents and all these other things that are, really increasing the complexity. And we know that complexity is the killer of effective cybersecurity. And then obviously there's a variety of teams that are involved in these different types of solutions, which puts a burden on the teams. So, this is leading to some pretty adverse effects, such as, patient portals being down for long periods of time, affecting people's abilities to be treated efficiently at one end of the spectrum, and then to the other end of the spectrum of patients dying after ransomware hits a German hospital back in September of 2020, where they could not treat the patient due to the systems being down, and she was forced to be transferred to another hospital where, she died in the process, and marking the first ever case of a fatality being linked to a cybersecurity attack. I mean, that's big stuff there, right? And additionally, hospital systems such as the one hit in Queensland earlier this year struggle to recover immediate care and senior care centers even after their government throws $100 million to boost in the hospital funding due to the need for more beds to ease the clogged emergency departments, causing hours of delays to treat very serious and urgent issues. And then recently we have massive supply chain attacks on vendors such as SolarWinds and Microsoft from nation states like Russia that are able to exploit vulnerabilities to do real harm to many of these organizations, including the healthcare organizations around the world that use these types of systems for IT operations. Really over the last decade, I think the number is over 3,700 healthcare data breaches have been reported, and that's just reported. And those breaches have resulted in the loss, theft, exposure, or disclosure of over 268 million health records. So that essentially equates to about 82% of the population in the United States. And in December of this last year, the average number of breaches per day for healthcare organizations in 2020 reached almost two breaches per day. And that's starting to exponentially increase as well. So this is not only affecting patients, though, from a health or even identity perspective when PHI is released, but it's also hurting our healthcare institutions. Since in 2021 alone, there has been $5.3 million spent in Hipaa settlements and civil monetary penalties across only 2 healthcare organizations so far. And then back in 2020, I think there was over $13 million spent in settlements. So, these numbers are exponentially increasing because the attackers are getting better and, more importantly, faster at accomplishing their missions against organizations. And we need to be able to identify their strategies early on and then, most importantly, move faster than them to stop them in their tracks. However, the major challenge we face is actually understanding each of these groups, these adversary groups, and it really all starts with understanding what sector within healthcare the threat actors are targeting and why they're targeting that sector. This type of information is what lets us know our enemies so we can actually have a fighting chance in the war against them. And as you can see here, different adversary groups target different sectors for different reasons, right? So the e-criminal groups are typically unbiased in their campaigns because they will go after any and every organization, such as a local or regional hospital, as you've seen in a lot of the headlines, to large pharmaceutical companies and insurers and research organizations that store PHI. And then there's the hacktivists, which are usually groups of criminals that hack organizations because they hold strong beliefs against an organization or complete nations based on a number of factors. And then you have the nation states who are often colluding with these types of groups, and many of the nation states have their own mission or their own agenda based on geopolitical affairs, such as response against sanctions in the case of somewhat recent events with Iran, to China stealing intellectual property for medicines or vaccinations from pharmaceutical companies without the extreme research and development costs that are associated with the development of or the development process of those types of medications. And then you've got different MO with Russia for industrial espionage that they've perfected across many different organizations, including both private and public sectors, and including healthcare. So we're dealing with many advanced threat actors in this threat landscape. And again, they're only getting better with their tradecraft, and they're also moving faster than ever. So So what's even more concerning is that these groups of adversaries are shifting their strategies from the traditional high volume spam and phishing emails that are targeted at thousands of organizations globally with the hopes that users at these organizations will just click on a link and open up a world of possibilities for the threat actors to be successful. That still happens, no doubt, but it is becoming more rare because security technologies have evolved. And today, most of the email and endpoint security solutions that are out there can thwart these attempts pretty successfully with a variety of techniques such as machine learning or behavioral heuristics. But in response to that, the adversaries are starting to innovate and get more strategic with all of the successful ransomware attacks of the past that they were able to be profitable on. And nation states are very hard at work at finding new techniques that they can use with their seemingly unlimited budget to be able to innovate and find new techniques. So they're shifting from this short-term operation of just spamming everyone to a very long-term operation of sort of social engineering and trying to find their way into an organization with a variety of different tactics, especially targeting some of our most valuable assets, such as our employees, for example. This is referred to as big game hunting, and e-criminal operations are using ransomware to target very large organizations for a very high return. And often these sophisticated campaigns include well-tested reconnaissance, delivery, lateral movement techniques, some of the stuff that we see that governments are leveraging, or a lot of the e-criminal groups are starting to leverage as well. So we need to evolve our defenses faster than our enemies, or else we cannot be successful at thwarting them. Again, really coming back to the key element of speed being the most important thing when we're up against these adversaries. Now, as far as ransomware is concerned, there are extremely innovative networks of adversaries, such as Wizard Spider, which is the name we gave to a large e-criminal group that has been leveraging the infamous Ryuk ransomware that we have seen hit many organizations over the last couple of years. And they've collected approximately $100 million of Bitcoin to date and are in the process of innovating and retooling their capabilities to conduct new campaigns that could be even more successful than that one. And they're increasingly becoming more complex in their operations, which makes it harder for security teams to thwart. And they're leveraging some models such as ransomware as a service, just like we leverage software as a service to essentially effectively deliver some solutions for our customers. And now they're using completely custom code compiled to avoid many of the technologies that have been able to detect Ryuk. And they're really focusing on data extortion alongside encrypting the data now, as we've seen recently in some ransomware attacks. And this is forcing organizations to think about if they want to pay to stop them from releasing this data, or if they're willing to accept the risk that their business could potentially go under if all of their customers stop using their services because of this, or their significant fines or lawsuits that stem from that. And many small to mid-sized businesses can sink very quickly depending on their services, and this is a major threat to a lot of organizations. And then ironically, some might think paying the adversary to prevent them from releasing the data on the dark web is pointless since they're already criminals, but these criminals actually have a reputation to live up to, and they absolutely don't want to ruin that reputation by not holding true to their word, which would prevent future organizations from paying if they knew they weren't true to their word. So it's actually pretty amazing how loyal criminals can actually be. So one of the major challenges in the last year for most organizations, there we go, okay. So one of the major challenges in the last year for most organizations, including healthcare organizations, is the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the challenges is that it forced us to rethink how we do cybersecurity, since many of our employees had to shift to a work from home model, and we needed to make sure those users were protected wherever they went in the world. They would be connected at their home network, maybe not to our corporate networks, at least unless they have to connect via VPN, but even 100% of the time that, some of the users don't do that. And so we saw that this shift is starting to make us rethink how do we protect our endpoints wherever they are in the world. And we also know that, if they were in the world and they weren't connected, if they're at a Starbucks, for example, or if they're at home, it's even easier for these adversaries to be successful at targeting the employees as an entry point to get into our corporate networks, because the network security at these remote locations isn't nearly as sophisticated as the network security typically is in our corporate offices. And we also know that if these users were targeted and the adversary was successful at getting into their computers, then it poses a whole new level of stress on our security teams, since we would need to get access to that computer to try and clean it up. Or more times than not, just have our IT groups reset or reimage the system altogether, since we don't want to take any chances sometimes, just because we may not have that specialized expertise on staff. And this requires a ton of time and effort alongside user downtime, and it's just not effective when everything comes back to being faster than the adversaries, right? If we have all this downtime, we're introducing a lot of risk into the environment, and by the time you do all that, the adversary could have jumped to another point in the corporate network or another user that they targeted, and then it just becomes a game of whack-a-mole until they're successful at their mission. And then obviously to pile on top of those challenges, we've got adversary groups using these ransomware as a service attacks to target organizations with phishing emails that are carefully and very well crafted, leveraging COVID-19 headlines that has many people around the world in an emotional state that can easily be exploited when they click on certain emails from who they think are very reputable people, whether it's inside or outside of their organization, but you obviously realize or don't realize that they're not who they say they are at the end of the day. So all of this is very concerning, and we need to have a sense of urgency together to solve these challenges so we can start beating the adversaries at their own game. So how do we start winning against them? That's the question. So obviously, first and foremost, we need to know their techniques, which is why we built CrowdStrike from the ground up to do incident response, but also give visibility into endpoints globally. So now we can see these emerging attacks happening across the board. And now that we know their techniques, we can now be faster than them in our response because we understand what they're doing and how to respond. And so being faster happens to be the biggest challenge for most organizations, because now with EDR solutions that, we were one of the companies to help pioneer in the industry over the last decade, that provided the visibility to see the threats happening. But now the biggest challenge for most organizations is the speed at which we need to move to mitigate a threat. And obviously this is really important specifically for healthcare organizations when it could be life or death on the table, as we've seen. So most security teams are not set up for efficiency and speed, and there's a few challenges there, but typically because there are so many cybersecurity solutions that they need to deploy and manage, introducing the complexity, and a lot of the times they're just not leveraging these tools 24/7 because it's a challenge to be able to hire 5 people minimum to man or to operate the technologies in a 24/7 capability. And so as you can see here, once one of the threat actors gains initial access onto a computer through a variety of mechanisms, such as a phishing email or exploiting a vulnerability or whatnot, they're able to move through the environment to another computer or corporate server or cloud server that runs operations or hosts PHI data, for example. They can move all within about 2 to 4 hours on average. So some adversaries that we track are actually taking less than an hour to compromise an endpoint and move to another one, right? In the case of some of the nation states that we're actually tracking, Russia in particular takes minutes to be able to do this because they're so advanced. And we believe that it's crucial for security teams to be able to detect, understand, and remove this adversary before they're able to move around in the environment, which is what we call the point of breakout, which is, you can see the little timeline here is what we're all racing toward. And it's because that reduces risk of them accomplishing their objective, which in many cases is ransomware for data exfiltration or destruction or extortion. But the eye-opening reality is that according to a recent poll of over 1,900 organizations, the average time for an internal security team at those organizations to be able to detect, understand, and remove the adversary is a whopping 162 hours. So that essentially gives the average adversary, that's not even the most advanced nation states that we see, that gives them plenty of time, right, weeks, to achieve their objective. And that is not good enough. And we will lose the battle almost every time if we don't change this paradigm of speed. So that is why we believe, and we obviously earlier last year testified in Congress, and we believe organizations need to be able to build a strategy that leverages the people and the process behind the technology 24/7 to achieve what we call the 1-10-60 rule. And that means an organization can detect a threat within 1 minute by leveraging technology such as our Falcon technology, which is providing you visibility into all of your assets, and then understand that threat by leveraging incident response expertise within 10 minutes, using the people and the process built around that technology, which is a major challenge for organizations to build internally, and then be able to remove that threat within 60 minutes, using the experts that know how to mitigate threats in real time to stop an adversary in their tracks. So we need to shrink the average remediation time from 162 hours down to 60 minutes at the very least, if not faster, depending on the adversary that's after your environment. So as I mentioned before, since CrowdStrike's inception, we've been laser focused on building the right tool and the right architecture, more importantly, that allows you to detect adversaries, understand what they're doing, and remove them from the environment, regardless of wherever your employees or your servers are, at home, in the cloud, at the corporate network, at Starbucks. It doesn't matter. Since we're able to deliver this technology from the cloud, we can get instant and 24/7 visibility wherever our assets go. And this is a revolutionary approach that many security solutions on the market over the last 2 decades just could not offer, and partly because the cloud wasn't as powerful as now we know it is, right? And so we use a combination of cybersecurity tools, which we call modules, such as our endpoint detection response, which provides that 24/7 visibility. It's sort of a DVR on the endpoint. And then we obviously pair that with our next-gen antivirus, which uses artificial intelligence, such as machine learning and behavioral heuristics to really predict and stop threats in their tracks. And then all that's delivered through a very lightweight sensor that you can put on essentially anything that has an operating system, which is typically where your data or your users are at the end of the day. And this allows organizations to be successful at stopping breaches across all of their endpoints. However, to stop these advanced attack techniques that these adversaries are using, deploying technology alone won't fix the challenge, because they're finding new ways to evade technologies. Russia, China, all the ones that we're tracking, they're very well aware of what machine learning is, and they're very, very well aware of how to leverage those types of technologies to actually evolve their techniques. So we know that the tool can be very powerful, and it can automate most of the challenge around stopping the majority of threats. But if you don't have the experts running the tool, it becomes a challenge to use. Sort of like a Boeing 747. While it's an amazing tool, we would not let the passengers who are not experienced with running that tool run it. We obviously want a well-trained pilot. And it really takes human expertise and effort to implement a solution effectively, manage and update that solution when needed, and then fine-tune it so it works optimally in these different types of environments, which are all different across the board. And then it takes trained experts that are specialized in monitoring and responding with that same technology 24/7. Having a security generalist try to take on all of these different efforts is sort of like going to a general practitioner doctor and asking them to perform brain surgery. At the end of the day, it could be unsuccessful, right? So all of this requires many extremely specialized talents that are different from one another. And we know there's a major shortage of talent in the cybersecurity industry. And even when we find the talent, there's a challenge of hiring enough people to do this 24/7, since that approach can be very costly if you try to build that yourself. And we even have, we haven't even mentioned the challenge around training and retaining and all of that as well. So the reason why many organizations today still don't have effective cybersecurity is because of all these challenges and the complexity adding up. And while the adversaries are winning day in, day out, they're exploiting these challenges that they know most organizations have. So that's truly what we need to solve for, is the people, process, and the technology at the end of the day. So here at CrowdStrike, we want to change the game for every organization and for the adversaries that have been playing this game over the last 3 decades since the inception of the public internet. We essentially want to ensure that no organization experiences a breach. which is back to our original mission of stopping breaches. And that is why we actually built the Falcon Complete offering that's staffed with the expert incident responders, the expert threat hunters, a variety of different skill sets that are all specialized, so we can actually deliver the people in the process required to use this tool to not only stop the known attacks, but also identify new attacks that have never been seen before, and then act fast enough to remove them from the environment before they're successful at deploying ransomware or attacking our organization, whatever their MO might be. And so, we find that the people in the process is the most challenging part for a cybersecurity program here for many customers. And, I discussed before, since the average remediation time for most teams today are days, if not weeks, that's just not enough speed to stay ahead of the adversaries. And the speed and the expertise wrapped around a tool running a 24/7, we believe is the solution to be able to do that. And we're delivering these types of services for very large healthcare systems today, such as Cedars-Sinai and Seattle Children's and St. Luke's, who have truly realized the challenges that they face and the immediate value and expertise we can bring to them in stopping breaches 24/7 for their organizations, and also doing that in a cost-effective manner. So this sort of operationalizes a best-in-class technology and service focused on stopping breaches for our customers, which then allows them to reduce risk of a breach, but also reduce the workload on their teams and their IT teams that might be involved with rebuilding systems all the time, et cetera. And this is really how we can avoid all the potential costs associated with a breach, including those Hipaa violation costs, ransomware payments, incident response costs, legal costs, all those types of things. But perhaps the most important thing, avoiding the terrible potential reality of lives being lost if systems are down and people need help, right? So, and then we obviously back this with our breach prevention warranty, which is also backed by some of the world's largest cybersecurity insurance firms, including AIG, as sort of a guarantee to our customers that we will stop breaches on their behalf, or else we will pay for a breach if one were to occur under our watch. So with that, I appreciate you all joining me in this session, and I will go ahead and open it up for questions now.
Excellent presentation. Thank you so much, Saxon. We do have some questions for you. While we do that Q&A, I'm just going to bring up this poll for everyone out there in the audience. We want to get your feedback. What additional information would you like about the CrowdStrike solution? So we've got a lot of good questions coming in, Saxon. Let's see. First one here that caught my eye is Brian is asking, given the issues with the gas and oil supply chain that was disrupted this week and is wreaking havoc in the Southeast, do you have any recommendations how these complacent companies can get up to speed fast and protect their systems?
Yeah, so again, there's two major challenges even for an organization like that. It's first getting the right technology in place to be able to stop this from happening, but then also the people in the process, which is the bigger challenge, to get that technology to work properly so we can avoid those types of things going forward. And so, obviously technology is one part that we can help with. We're obviously a technology company, but at the end of the day, a solution like our Falcon Complete solution, which is a turnkey solution that allows you to not only deploy the technology, but also the people in the process, wrapped around that technology, will make that technology more effective at stopping breaches and therefore avoid situations like this, which, I think is, the company is definitely going through a lot, but then there's also a lot of folks who have an interruption of day-to-day life, because I think there's some shortages happening now on gasoline and stuff like that in the East. So yeah.
Excellent. And then this is an interesting question from Eric. How does your AI keep up against the enemy AI?
We're talking about the Terminator now.
Right.
So the beauty about our infrastructure is that when we built it 10 years ago, we built it on top of something that we've actually patented. You can go and research this yourself, but it's called our threat graph. And what this allows us to do is use graph database technology to collect threats that are happening across the almost hundreds of millions of endpoints that are currently under our technology today across thousands of organizations. And every time that something is ingested into that threat graph, we're able to use graphing technology to identify patterns that are happening. And so what this allows us to do is train our machine learning algorithms at a scale of roughly around 5 trillion events per week as it stands right now. But the more and more customers we get, the smarter the algorithms are. So what we have against the adversaries is this apparatus of millions of endpoints and thousands of customers all around the world. So our data points are stronger, whereas with a lot of the adversary groups that are out there, they don't have that capability. So I think that we definitely have a fighting chance in this, what I would consider a war at the end of the day, and we can definitely use technology in our favor for that.
Excellent. I like that. Here's a good question. They say, if I've built out a security team that has 24/7 monitoring, does this replace it, and why would I need it?
That's a good question. And so it's ironic because a lot of our customers who use this managed service have full security operations center teams. Sometimes they're smaller, they're 24/7, and they only have 4 or 5 employees, but then sometimes there's 20 or 30 in the case of a very large technology provider that we provide this for 800,000 of their endpoints. And what we bring to the table in that model is being able to fortify and strengthen your capabilities, because a lot of the times the SOC is set up for monitoring, but when it comes to threat hunting and responding to a threat, again, coming back to speed, being able to do that in minutes and not hours, that is where we actually can bolster the current capabilities of your SOC to make it more effective at stopping breaches. We do also have a lot of customers that don't have a SOC at all and rely on us to really provide the breach prevention services as well. So, good question.
Yeah, excellent. Let's see, does Falcon Complete remediate or just investigate alerts?
That's the best question so far. So when we built the service, we took a look at the managed security services and MDR space, and we saw that no one was doing the remediation, which means quarantine bad files, delete a bad file, reverse a registry key change, stop a network connection. Really, the actions needed to get rid of the adversary at the end of the day were still falling on the customers and the organizations. And that, we believe, again, slows things down because not every organization has the specialized expertise to handle that type of threat. And so when we built it, we said we need to take this all the way to the end and mitigate the threat for our customers and provide them no homework, but only results. So quick answer there is we remediate.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, that's what companies need. They need that remediation, so that's awesome. I know we're running out of time here in our presentation and our Q&A window. Before we go, I wanted to ask you, what should folks do to get started with CrowdStrike Complete? So I definitely would recommend, you can learn a lot about it. We publish blog posts. We do a lot of things on www.crowdstrike.com where you can see the day in the life of what we do, how we're doing it, how we were able to protect organizations against the SolarWinds, against the Microsoft compromises, and a variety of other big game hunting techniques, et cetera. But feel free to reach out to me directly. It can be found on LinkedIn or my first name, last name at crowdstrike.com. Or obviously our website is set up for you to be able to easily contact someone based on where your organization's headquartered, and we can definitely have a conversation from there. Excellent. All right. Well, Saxon, it's been great having you on the event today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Good day.
And for more information on the CrowdStrike Falcon Complete solution for healthcare organizations, make sure that you check out the Handouts tab there in your audience console. There is a resource that goes into detail on exactly what Falcon Complete provides, how it works, the capabilities, and then at the bottom of it, actually, there is a link to start a free trial of NextGen AV over at crowdstrike.com. So make sure that you check that out as well. We got a lot of great questions coming in. Thank you for those. We do appreciate those. If you haven't answered the poll question, now is the time to do it. It's there on the screen, and I'll leave it up while I announce our final gift card winner. We have another Amazon $500 gift card going to Thomas Scubble from Pennsylvania. Congratulations, Thomas Scubble from Pennsylvania. I'll post all 3 prize winners right now in the questions panel. All right, there you go. Again, thank you to everyone who responded to the poll question. Before you go, I want to remind you to check out the 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes store. If you are a potential sponsor of an upcoming EcoCast or MegaCast, reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And then finally, don't forget to follow us, keep up to date on what we're doing on our LinkedIn channel. The link to that is in the top right-hand side of your audience console, Twitter, and YouTube. We post all of our events over on YouTube as well. So we hope to continue the conversation out on the social media. I hope that you learned a lot on the Healthcare EcoCast today. I know that I did. Thank you so much for participating, and have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.